Good morning, everyone. And with that, we have everyone here. We'll take a roll call. Good morning, Commissioner Cameron.
Good morning, everyone. I am here.
Commissioner O'Brien.
I am here.
Commissioner Hill.
Present.
Okay, we're all set to proceed. Today is January 27th, 2022. Today is public meeting number 368. We're going to get started with minutes today. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes, legal team drafted proposed minutes from January 12th, 2022. And I would move that the commission approve the minutes from January 12th, 2022 in the packet, subject to any necessary changes for typographical errors or other non-material matters.
Second.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So any edits, comments, corrections? Excellent job. All right. Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes, 4-0. Thank you. And thank you, legal. Moving on to the administrative update. Karen, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. For the first item on the administrative update, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Director Bruce Ban to give you an update on what's going on at the casinos.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chair. I'll start with MGM. MGM's in the process of changing their company-wide loyalty program, MLife, to MGM Rewards. The main update to this is their branding, and the ability for guests to gain loyalty points for non-gaming purchases, like hotel, dining, and so on. They're also starting to open up under 21 access to South End Market and more amenities with families, and more of the hotel is starting to open up to 24/7 access. They're in the process of relocating GameSense to a new and better location in the building. There's nothing new to report at PPC. Encore is actually getting ready for their grand poker reopening on January 31st, with hours from Monday to Thursday from 10 to 8 p.m. And that's kind of all I have for the openings. Any questions?
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner O'Brien?
Bruce, how many tables again are at Encore? How many?
12.
12. Okay.
Actually, we did all the inspections this week, and everything's ready to go.
Bruce, can you remind us how many are at MGM, please?
They're at 12.
12 also. And I should have made a note. I should have preserved a mental note of it. Bruce, how many jobs were restored with the introduction of the 12 poker tables?
I don't have the exact numbers yet, but I can get those for you and get them to you.
Right. Brad, I don't know if you remember on our tour at MGM. I wouldn't want to guess. Okay, thank you. That would be great to know clearly. And they're different level jobs, correct?
Yes.
Okay, dealers and supervisors. Well, I know that the dealers have been very anxious to get back to work. So there we go.
Yes.
Excellent news. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Chair, quick question. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Director Band, was that? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I think you may have an answer.
I can tell you 50 jobs in poker at MGM. I just got a text.
Yeah, and I think that does ring a bell now. I didn't dare say it. So thank you. Gail.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Director Band, was that a collaborative effort to strategically move GameSense, or how did that come about?
I believe probably Mark Manderlin would be the better one to answer that. But
Yeah, and I know Mark isn't here today, Bruce,
I know.
because he's traveling, but I am aware, yes, that was a collaborative effort, and they worked with the GameSense folks, and actually the GameSense team was quite happy with the change in the move, is my understanding.
Yep.
Terrific. That's great. And obviously very good news about the South End Market and the hotel increasing times and availability. So good news. Thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
I just one more, Bruce. In terms of the poker tables, are these the opening efforts with plans to ramp up, or are they unclear whether they're going to be ramping up the number of poker tables?
That I guess would always determine on business and a lot of other factors as they go. But the room looks good. It's ready to go. I was out there on Tuesday and was helping Lewis with the inspection, and I guess it kind of be determined by business.
Do you happen to know how many poker tables are at, say, Mohegan Sun or Foxwoods?
Not
Not
at the current moment. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so any other questions on that item for the administrative agenda?
So Commissioner Cameron, you're all set. I thought you were leaning in. No, I think we're all set, but excellent report, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so the next item on the agenda is just to touch base on the COVID-19 update for the reopening of the offices. So at the last commission meeting, we had presented that to the commission. The commission thought the date for reopening at this point would be February 14th because that's a Monday. So currently, our next scheduled public meeting is on the 10th. We could, if the commission so desired, have an interim meeting if that is helpful to the commission as far as affirming that that's going to be the back to the office date on the 14th. So we certainly have flexibility with that. The working group has been discussing the COVID policies within the office. At this point, we are monitoring those to see if there are any changes based on operational needs or anything we need to do there. So we'll be monitoring that and bringing that before the commission if there are recommended changes. And also the team, it's particularly Natasha, is tracking the trends for the positivity rate for COVID, both in Suffolk County and Massachusetts, as well as the hospitalizations. We are seeing that things are going down and trending down, which is great news. So we'll be continuing to monitor those because that I expect would help inform the commission about returning to the office and what parameters you may have for in the office, particularly with respect to masking. So at this point, we have some flexibility when you'd like to make any determination about the final decision on the date being February 14th, but as of right now, that's what we're tracking for. Any questions on that?
Commissioner Scales?
Yep. Being part of the working group, we did talk about really evaluating closer to the actual restarting date. So we're really working with current numbers and making a good decision based on those numbers. As Director Wells said, it looks good. The trends are going in the right direction. And I knew there was an internal policy issue that we were debating whether or not that needed to be adjusted. So I know that we did talk about maybe to give people certainty, maybe by next Thursday or something, possibly having a quick meeting to really talk about the numbers, review everything, and make a decision then. And that gives people enough time to be ready. That's just something we talked about. So I just wanted to put that out there as something we probably should decide now if we wanted to have a special meeting, I say next Thursday or so, and just really understand the numbers and give people real certainty about what to expect the week of the 14th.
Commissioner O'Brien, you want to chime in?
I think Gail summarized it accurately. We want to make it on the most up-to-date information possible, which is why we've been tracking the numbers, and they are trending in the right direction, which is great. The question is, how do we time our last sort of touchstone before we as a commission make a decision about whether to stick with the 14th or move it, and ever mindful of people's schedules, et cetera. I think as long as we all know there's the possibility of having to call that meeting on the 10th or around then, I think we're in good shape to stick with the 14th, and then knowing we might just have to meet before then at the last minute.
Yeah, I'm hearing that there may be a need for another meeting. Commissioner Cameron threw out next Thursday. We're pretty nimble about when we can convene anyway. So if it's more helpful to have data even closer, into the early part of the next week, I think we could do that too. I'm mindful of school vacation, but that's the week of the 21st, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So rather than set it right now, Commissioner Cameron, is it okay if we stay a little fluid on that?
Oh, absolutely. I just
Okay, good.
just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with that and what makes the most sense to give people for the two issues, right? The one was maybe readjusting an internal policy that may be challenging, and the second one was the actual numbers and really making a firm decision. So yes, we can stay fluid for sure.
Okay, but right now, the expectation is February 14th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I see
Bruce,
Director
your
Durant has a
hand up
question.
for real?
Yes, it's good.
I have an answer on the Encore. They have 20 dealers and 25 supervisors as of now.
20 and 25 or 25 and 25?
2 dealers and 25 supervisors.
So 47 total?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we'll just stay nimble in terms of when Karen and the working group would like to convene if there's a need. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
if there are no other questions, that's the status update for that. The next 2 agenda items, I have our CIO, Ms. Katrina Jagu-Gomes, here for any questions you may have, but there are 2 policies. The first one is related to international travel and use of our IT assets for international travel. I'll summarize it in that these are just best practices for use of equipment and protecting our assets and our security of our IT systems. I don't know, Katrina, if you have any other comments on that. But given that this is a policy because the commissioners also have equipment and it applies to the commissioners as well, it seems that it would be appropriate for the commissioners to approve the policy and then we could go ahead and implement that as effective. Any questions or any need for further explanation from Katrina?
Katrina, are they written right now to apply to the commissioners, or do you need to add that in? Is that part of our vote?
I think it just sort of is very general, so it doesn't specifically say commissioners, but given that
It should, well,
Just as users.
yeah,
users, yeah, for the first one, and the second one I wasn't sure if it applied. We're only looking at the international travel right now.
yeah, so we'll go through these individually, yes.
So the users, so if any of us are taking our equipment internationally, this would apply to all of us.
Correct.
Has everyone had the chance to review it?
And just to share, in some instances, you may not be able to take equipment depending on the risk rating of the country. And I just want to recognize Kevin Gavro. He's done a fantastic job. He's our senior converge engineer, and he's been diligently working on all of our security policies, including the 2 that are in front of you, commissioners. And this particular policy is really driven from a couple standpoints. One, the data protection of the MGC resources and assets, and that includes data, PII, any type of materials that would be taken, also due to the high risk of allowing connections outside of the US. Not just MGC, but a lot of the other agencies are also doing or executing similar policies or have already done so. And so these risk ratings are really assigned by data and security privacy of the country that you're connecting from. And there is a list that's currently updated through multiple resources: the US Department of State, the Department of Treasury and Foreign Assets Control, the FBI, and the Office of National Intelligence. So these are really well vetted for the risk ratings.
Questions or comments for Katrina and Kevin? I have a couple. How much time, and I can't remember if it's in the policy, Kevin, do you need notice if folks are traveling abroad?
We requested, I think, 2 weeks in the policy.
Okay, it is in there. Thank you. So you need some time. So that's an important. They can't do it overnight, guys, right? And then my second isn't really a question; it's a comment. Kevin, you do superb work, and it's reflected in the policy, the format of it, the clarity of it. I know you have a great team in Meter and Katrina, but it's excellent work, and I just really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think a vote would be appropriate at this point.
Any further questions or comments? Do I have a motion? Commissioner Hill.
I would move that the commission adopt the international travel policy relative to IT equipment as included in the commissioner's packet.
Second,
Thanks, Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner Cameron.
aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Excellent. Now we move on to the training.
So
Okay.
security awareness training and testing, and this is I would like to compliment the IT team on this as well. A very comprehensive training and testing policy. This is basically our internal mechanism to ensure that people are doing what they need to do to keep our IT assets and our systems safe. As Katrina has explained to me, that one of the greatest risks is just error, people doing things they shouldn't be doing. So training and testing is the way to address that risk. So you'll see there is a comprehensive setup for the training and the testing. With respect to commissioners, it basically includes the commissioners in those procedures and the training and testing. However, we did at note where it comes to the schedule of failure penalties, specifically with commissioners. There is no authority that the agency has over commissioners. That's guided by statute and the appointing authority. So we just wanted to reference that. So I have, Katrina available for any specific questions on the policy itself. I don't know, Katrina, you have any comments on the policy, but similar to the other policy, we would be looking for a vote to adopt it.
Yeah, of course. I just want to clarify. So this is holistic security, not just technology or data or systems. This includes PII. This includes paperwork or materials or access to our facilities. So it is pretty robust. It's security, from multiple facets, and the training does cover all of those elements. And the program also will include social engineering exercises. So there will be phishing exercises, testing of our employees, because we want to make sure that this is a high priority for them and they're always conducting or doing their work in the appropriate manner. And so they will be intermittently assessed at no regular period. So to keep us on our toes.
Did everyone have the opportunity to review Appendix A?
Now I'm scrolling to that.
So the good news is lots of opportunity to fail, but not endless.
Well, yeah, but I
Cameron.
was thinking, I hope it never gets to the point
That's
where you're on your fifth violation after having this training. I do think it's really good that we're adopting best practices here with both of these issues. But when I looked at those violations, I was like, wow, I hope it never gets to that. I'd be embarrassed if I ever got to the fifth violation.
Well, if anyone gets to level 7 where they have to meet with Katrina, they're in trouble.
Well, absolutely.
But there's an opportunity still. That's the good news. So, but I think Commissioner Cameron appreciated my pointing it out. It's a really significant policy in training, right? So, and I think the good news from that schedule is that it's okay if you fail, but there's going to be continuing training that comes with it. So, In other words, don't freak out yet, but really pay attention during the training, right, Katrina?
Yes,
Yeah, it's important.
because there will be a quiz later.
Oh God, it's daunting. It's actually really, it's a really good reminder because it's happening in throughout our lives, right? Not just in our professional lives. So it's really, really important training. I wasn't teasing when I pointed out Appendix A because I did think it was important for everyone to understand that, there will be ongoing testing and it's important. So thank you. But you need a vote on this as well. And I presume everyone had a chance to really look at it, commissioners. Yeah. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the commission adopt the security awareness training and testing policy as included in the commissioner's packet.
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay. Any questions, edits? Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes. Thank you. Excellent work, Katrina, to you and your team. Kevin, thank you so much.
So that concludes the administrative update, Chair. So I'll turn it back to you for the next agenda item.
Okay, I think we're turning to Dr. Lightbound next. Good morning, Dr. Lightbound. You have multiple items for us today. Always interesting. Good morning.
So our first item is the City of Boston's new Be Together vaccination requirement. It went into effect on January 15th. And Chip Tuttle, COO of Suffolk Downs, approached me about it when it came out to let them know they would be complying with it. It requires a first vaccine by January 15th. It's a phased-in program. So by February 15th, a patron coming in or an employee would need to have their second vaccine. The requirements for the business that's involved is that they post the information about it at their entrance and that they check the people as they come in. Suffolk's doing that with their staff, with security present. Chip has been monitoring it and has said that so far there really haven't been issues. They've had to turn away a handful of people. The program allows for either a paper copy of your vaccine or digital copies. It's all on the city website. It's very clearly put out exactly how you can show that you've been vaccinated. They also have a Be Together vaccine app that you can access on their website and put your vaccine on that to be able to show it to whatever businesses you're going into. Let's see. They also have an equitable implementation guidance on their website to help the businesses be sure that they aren't discriminating against anybody, regarding race, national origin, disability, gender, etc. And COO Tuttle has said that his employees are all aware of that as far as implementing that program. Chip is on the phone line if anybody has any further questions for him.
Questions for Dr. Lightbound or Mr. Tuttle, who's available? Commissioner Hill, you all set? Okay. All right, very thorough. Thank you. When you mentioned the website, were you only talking about Boston's website?
Yes, it's the City of Boston, boston.gov. And
Okay,
it's
great.
one of the first items right when you pull that page up.
Great. Thank you. I think we're all set on that. Do you want to move on then to the unpaid winnings?
Okay, our next items are regarding the unclaimed tickets. And just a reminder that if somebody purchases a ticket at one of our tracks, they have a year from the year that that ticket was purchased to cash that in. And so what we're looking at now are tickets that were purchased in 2020. They become eligible at this point in 2022. And also just a reminder that 2020 was the first year of the pandemic where we were actually shut down with racing for, several months. So the numbers are a little lower than what we would see, but it would primarily be due to the less bedding at the facilities during that time. Chad Bork, our senior financial analyst, has reviewed these numbers. He has verified with members of each of the tracks that his numbers are in sync with what they have. And so for Plain Ridge, the amount that is due to come back to the commission is $93,620.08. And this does require a vote.
Thank you, Chad, for your work. Good morning. And Dr. Lightbound is looking for a vote on, and we'll do this one at a time. Are there any questions with respect to just the issue about the unpaid winnings? Commissioner Hill, I'm not sure if you've seen this before. But
I am well aware of it and ready to move forward.
okay, do you have a motion for us?
I move that the commission approve the amount of $93,620.08 as the unclaimed winnings from the calendar year 2020 at Plain Ridge Park as described in the memorandum in the commissioner's packet and discussed today. And further, that upon receipt of the funds, the CFAO be authorized to deposit such funds into the purse account at Plain Ridge in accordance with Chapter 128A, Section 5A.
Second.
Any questions? We didn't really go over the deposit issue. Any questions on that? Okay, excellent. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Cameron, you seconded, right? Okay, thank you.
I did.
Okay, Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
and I vote yes, thank you.
So the next amount is for Suffolk Downs, and that amount is $90,864.66.
And in this case, it would go back, it comes to the commission, but the for efficiency purposes, it would then go back to Sterling Suffolk, correct?
So the amounts come to the commission, and then once the commission receives them, they go back out for the two horse tracks. Those amounts go into the purse accounts at the tracks. And then the amounts, since there is no Greyhound Racing purse account anymore, the legislature had created the Greyhound Racing Stabilization Fund, and anything that would go into a purse account goes into that account now. So the monies from Wonderland and Raynham would go back into the Greyhound Stabilization Fund.
Yeah. So for the one before us right now, Suffolk, and then that amount, the $90,000 amount, that goes right back to the racetrack. I mean, right back to Sterling, to Suffolk.
Into the purse account.
Into the purse account.
Yeah, it's a separate,
Yeah.
fund.
Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the amount of $90,864.66 as the unclaimed winnings for calendar year 2020 at Sterling Suffolk Racecourse as described in the memorandum in the commissioner's packet and discussed today. And further, upon receipt of the funds, the CFAO be authorized to deposit such funds into the purse account at Sterling Suffolk, in accordance with Chapter 128A, Section 5A.
Excellent.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes. Now we're on to the Greyhound.
Yes. So the amount for Wonderland is $1,740.02. And does need a vote.
Can I just, so is the other more than one racing stabilization funds, or is the only one we pay money into the Greyhound?
The only one is the Greyhound Racing Stabilization Fund, yes.
Okay. Thank
what
you.
happened was when Greyhound racing ended, there was no more need for a purse account. And so the legislature made a separate account. They have not done that with the thoroughbreds at this point. So that money is still going into a thoroughbred purse account.
Thanks.
It's per statute, all of it.
Yep.
So again, the Wonderland amount is $1,740.02.
Do I have a motion?
Certainly. Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the amount of $1,740.02 as the unclaimed winnings from calendar year 2020 at Wonderland as described in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today, and that further upon receipt of the funds that the CFAO be authorized to deposit such funds into the Racing Stabilization Fund.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
and I vote yes, 4-0. And finally,
And just to clarify, because we got a little bit ahead of ourselves where we won't need to do the authorization now for the CFO to go ahead and pay these out because you guys are voting on that as you do the individual tracks. But the reason why we did that was because originally we would have to come back after the tracks had submitted these amounts to us. Then we would come back in front of the commission and ask for a vote to send those out to the purse accounts and the Greyhound Stabilization Fund. And last year, we asked the commission if they would be amenable to voting on it at the meeting at this time of year, so the finance department could go ahead and do that. So that's how that all came about. So now I'll just go ahead and ask for the random amount is $117,920.92.
any questions for Dr. Lightbound or Chad? Okay, then I'll have a motion on that one, please.
Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the amount of $117,920.92 as the unclaimed winnings from calendar year 2020 at Raynham Taunton, as described in the memo in the commissioner's packet and discussed today, and that further upon receipt of the funds that the CFAO be authorized to deposit such funds into the Racing Stabilization Fund.
Second.
No questions. Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
and I vote yes. Thank you, 4-0. Great work, and the efficiency is clear. So thank you, Dr. Lightbound, on that. Now we're going to go to item 4F, Alex, and that also will require a vote. I guess it's all part of it. It's all part. Yeah.
The way they wrote the votes.
Yes, the agenda.
Yeah, that's already been included. So
yeah, but I should have just read through rather than jump to just the letter. Thank you. So we're all set on your business of the day.
yeah,
Very
we're all set.
efficient, as Crystal imagined. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Lightbound and Mr. Bork, always excellent work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're turning to Mark, who I understand is traveling. So we have Marie Claire. Good morning. Is that correct, Karen? Marie Claire?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry. I had to-
Okay, I wanted to make sure Mark wasn't phoning in or anything. Good morning, Marie Claire. It's so nice to see you.
Good morning, Tridestine. Good to see you. Good morning, Commissioners. So today we'll be releasing a public safety report entitled Assessment of the Casino's Impacts on Operating Under the Influence, OUI, and OUI Involved Traffic Collisions by Christopher Bruce. Just a bit of a refresher, why do we do this work and why it's important? Going back to the legislature, Section 71 of the Expanded Gaming Act directs the Commission to develop an annual research agenda to understand the social and economic impacts of casino gambling in the Commonwealth. Included in this agenda is an understanding of the relation between gambling and levels of crime. Shortly after Plain Ridge Park Casino opened, we've been tracking public safety impacts, including crime, calls for collision, and calls for service and collision of our 3 licensees on a regular basis. And one area that we, and supported by GPAC, the Gaming Policy Advisory Committee, felt that deserved further attention was the examination of the relation between the presence of casinos in Massachusetts and operating under the influence, which is a specific way of looking at public safety impacts. And Christopher Bruce, who has done all of our public safety work to date, prepared this report. Christopher Bruce is a professor of criminal justice at Hudson University in Bangor, Maine. He's also a career crime analyst with previous service at the Cambridge Police Department and the Danvers Police Department. He has been working as a crime analyst consultant with the MGC since 2015 and has done incredible work. Christopher is moving forward to other opportunities. And so this is his last project with the MGC. And as mentioned, Mark is away today, but he wanted to extend his deep gratitude for all the work that Christopher has done. Christopher helped us build a solid foundation of public safety research and build a system for us to ongoingly examine public safety impacts in Massachusetts. He built a baseline understanding of public safety before the casino started operations and did regular follow-up. This work is unprecedented, and there really isn't a model anywhere in the US to do this type of work. But Christopher built that system and worked closely with the commission, with law enforcement agencies, and with the research review committee to produce a total of 14 reports for us so far. So Christopher, we are very grateful for all your work. And now I'll pass it over to Christopher to present the findings of this report, and then open the floor for the commissioners for any questions or anything else they would like to say to Christopher.
Madam Chair, before Christopher starts, can I add a few comments to the very nice introduction that we gave to Christopher? As Marie-Claire mentioned, this is the last project that Christopher will be working with the commission. And I just want to especially for Commissioner Hill, this was a challenge when we started. How do we, because it requires all the police chiefs to work collaboratively to provide their data in order for us to analyze it and really figure out what's going on, first as a baseline and then as the casinos continued year after year to build. And I remember our first meeting at Plain Ridge, and I set up the meeting with the police chiefs, and it was an ask of them, can you help us with this? It's never been done before in the United States. And one of the police chiefs at Plain Ridge said, look, this is a tough one, but I know this crime analyst, I trust him, which is critical for police chiefs. And geez, maybe he'd be willing to work with us. So that's how we got to Mr. Bruce. And we're successful in building this entire program that, as Marie-Claire pointed out, has never been done in the United States. I was at a conference early on out in Las Vegas where Christopher presented, and they said, how the heck did you get the chiefs to buy into turning over their data? And I said, look, we hired a crime analyst that they trusted, and it's just worked really successfully over the years. And I'm very grateful to Christopher for the work he's done on behalf of this commission, and the buy-in and the collaborative effort from all of our chiefs from around the state who really did care about public safety and operating under the influence and all the issues that we've researched over the years. And they worked together very, very successfully. And that would not have happened without Christopher Bruce's reputation in Massachusetts and his ability to convince chiefs to turn over their data, which is a hard thing for a lot of chiefs to do, right? So just a big thank you from me, and I've enjoyed working with him for many, many years, and wish him well in his next endeavors.
Commissioner O'Brien, I know that you've worked closely with Professor Bruce on particularly the last several reports, and this one in particular. If you'd like to comment as well.
Yeah, sure. I know Mark was, disappointed timing worked out that he couldn't be here, but I second what Commissioner Cameron has said. She can speak certainly to the early years when I was not here, but in my time here, two of the things that really struck me about Christopher were, as Gail mentioned, so the respect and trust that he had with the police chiefs. And I think one of the reasons that he had that was not only the experience that he brought to the table, but when watching him in the meetings that we would have in verifying the information in the draft reports, that there was no arrogance at all. His desire was to get the facts correct. And so anybody in these meetings that brought up some local information or, twist that maybe made him go back and revisit, not only was he willing to, he was eager to, because he was always eager to make sure that what was going into these reports was accurate and helpful. So I think Commissioner Cameron did a very good summary of the experience the MGC has had with them and the quality of the reports. But for my 2 cents in terms of, I think part of the reason he was that successful also had to do with his dedication to making sure what was going out was accurate. And I'm sorry to see him go. I know he's got other opportunities and other commitments. And so I wish him well. I don't want to, draw out everyone's ability to hear the report and the summary on this, but good luck, Christopher, going forward.
Christopher, and I'll just add in, right now, this is just a great introduction for a critically important report that you're going to present, and it lays the foundation of you being a trusted researcher and advisor, and so we appreciate all that you bring to the Gaming Commission and to the public on these important issues. So with that, we will certainly have the chance at the end of your presentation to ask questions. And again, congratulate you on your tenure here and wish you well. Commissioner Hill, are you all set to hear from him? Okay, excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Marie Claire. Good morning. Oh, you're on mute. My apologies. Oh, you know what? We're having a little tech issue. So I don't see you on mute from here. Now you're muted. Try again. Let's see. Could it be on your computer itself somehow? Did you?
Let me try this. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you so much. Good morning.
My headset microphone seems to have died. I don't know what happened there. So
That's
thank
okay.
you all. That was very, very, very kind of you for those words, and I am sorry to be moving on. I think my university duties just got to be a little too time consuming, but anyway, I'll talk more about that at the end. But today I want to talk about drunk driving, and I'll, if you can approve it, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I assume you're all seeing the title slide now.
Yes, and I think we'll hold our questions until the conclusion of the presentation. So
Okay.
Thank you. That will be easiest for you and for us to manage. Thank you.
Sure. So what I did for this report was to take a look at all of the indicators that we had as to the influence of the casinos on drunk driving. As you can see, at the end, we'll talk about some of the additional data sets that I wish we had. But I think the ones that we do have point to a common conclusion, which was that there was a predictable and modest increase in drunk driving, as reflected in both crashes and arrests in not just the immediate communities, but within the state. And that the specific number is consistent with what you would expect given the volume of attendance that you get at these casinos. So there are three major data sets that I looked at for this report. One of the first of which is the least sort of reliable of them, which is agency complaints for operating under the influence. So when I say complaints, I mean both arrests and summonses. Arrests are the most common, of course, but occasionally an arrest can't be made on the scene and the person is summoned to court, but they're recorded essentially the same way in the different police departments' data sets. The second data set was the last drink locations as reported to the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission from cases that are adjudicated guilty, whether by plea or by finding. And the third data set are crashes that involved impaired driving. And as again, of the three, the first one is the least reliable an indicator of where drunk driving actually happens, but I thought it was maybe useful just to take a look at it. So we'll see the results of that in just a second. But before I got into our data, I did spend quite a bit of time researching what had been previously written about this subject, about the impact of different facilities that serve alcohol on drunk driving, whether it was a casino or any other facility. And basically the summary of the research is that the number of locations serving alcohol is absolutely associated with drunk driving. It varies quite a bit depending on the geography, and it varies depending on the type of facility. You can imagine, for instance, a hotel bar probably has less impact on drunk driving because many of its patrons stay there at the hotel, say, than a facility that people commute some distance to, and they're not staying there for the night. So those variances are seen in the past literature. Casinos specifically has been shown to generate more drunk driving trips than existed before the casinos were built, and that's particularly felt at rural casinos, none of which ours really are. But the more rural you get, basically, the more you'd expect an increase in drunk driving to and from the casino. And it's been a particular concern in Connecticut, where the two locations of its casinos, you would not really have much reason to go to those locations except for the casino. So since almost all of the traffic coming and going from those locations is casino related, any addition to drunk driving is going to be caused effectively by the presence of those casinos. All right, so I've already covered that. And basically the research, I think more should be done in this area, but it suggests that about 1 in every 625 drunk driving trips results in a crash, and about 1 in every 500 drunk driving trips results in an arrest. And where I think the research isn't quite finished in those areas is a trip isn't a great way to measure that variable. It should be measured in road miles driven, basically, and that's one thing that previous research just doesn't have a good handle on. But it's the best we have for now, and I used it to make my estimates. So some of the other variables related to drunk driving and increases in drunk driving are the total number of people who visit a location, of course, the percentage who drive to and from the location, the percentage of them who drink to the point of intoxication, any efforts made by the location to curb both intoxication and driving away from the facility while intoxicated, and any efforts in general to raise awareness and conscience about the effects of drunk driving. And those can include local efforts, efforts specific to the facilities, as well as national and regional widespread efforts like public service announcements and so forth. So essentially, my thesis here is that a certain increase in the number of drunk driving trips is essentially inevitable when you're bringing tens of thousands of people per day to new locations that serve alcohol. And so I just threw together some estimates here, some of them based upon previous research, some of them based upon actual hard data, some of them just guesses. And these are some areas in which some additional research could perhaps help us. So the 35,000 visitors per day, I think, is a reasonable estimate given on figures reported by the casinos themselves, figures reported to the media, and previous data researched and released by SEGMA. The 75% of them arriving by car is just a stab by me. I don't have any idea what the actual percentage is, and I don't know that that's been researched at all with any type of survey. the same as the percentage the drink and the percentage you become intoxicated. So those are just guesses. The point of it is just to see what the formula produces, and then you can see as you tweak those figures how the result changes. Now, if all the other assumption is that all those variables are independent, they probably aren't. Probably if you arrive by car, for instance, you're less likely to become intoxicated. But again, we don't have any solid research either way on that. But if those things were true, it would translate to about 59,000 additional drunk driving trips per year, which, based on that previous research indicating how many of those would result in crashes and arrests, would produce about 95 more drunk driving involved crashes per year and about 118 more drunk driving arrests per year, which are relatively consistent with what I observed in the data. They're not, I didn't nail it or anything, but they're within like an order of magnitude. I think the formula is a reasonably good guess. And the more that we research exactly what different patron behavior is, how many of them do arrive by car, how many of them do drink, and so forth, we'd be able to tweak that formula and get a more accurate estimate. But part of the reason I wanted to offer this is just to suggest that I don't have a dog in this fight. It's not my job to advocate for the casinos or against casinos, but I don't want anybody to misinterpret my work either. And there's nothing in here that I intend to sort of blame the casinos. My thesis here is that a certain number of additional drunk driving trips is essentially inevitable when you have facilities that serve alcohol. And unless we observe a number of crashes that is significantly above what we would estimate the total to be based on the best research, then we can say the casinos are probably operating optimally and deterring as much drunk driving as they reasonably can. That might be a controversial statement, so I'll take questions about that at the end. Starting with the arrest data, it's been very erratic for all locations really, and I only have one time period for Encore and 2 time periods for MGM. All of this data is pre-COVID. COVID really just changed fundamentally how we drive and how often we drive, and it changed drinking and driving because bars were closed for so long rather, and even after they reopened, patronage did not always rise to the previous levels. So COVID has so fundamentally changed the landscape that try to incorporate that data. I don't know. That'll be a challenge for your next researcher, I suppose, to figure out how best to do that. So this is all pre-COVID, but Plainridge Park was very erratic in how arrests changed in that area after PPC opened. MGM, also very erratic. It started low, went high, and Encore, since I only have one time period, I can only say that the arrests and summonses increased 24% in the one post-casino time period that we had for that location. That said, this again is probably the most unreliable of the data sets in determining the actual extent of drunk driving, because it's very reactive, or it's very responsive to what police decide to do, essentially. So as a police officer told me when I was very new to the job, he basically said, look, if I want to make a drunk driving arrest between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., I can almost always find somebody to stop an arrest. And that's true in a lot of places. So the number of arrests is going to be heavily influenced by how much emphasis a particular police department chooses to give to drunk driving. And if they know, for instance, a casino is going to be built and that might increase drunk driving in the area, they might be extra aware of it and they might be doing extra enforcement. And thus we'd expect the numbers to go up, even if the total number of drunk drivers doesn't, or we might expect the numbers to go up at a level greater than the actual number of additional drunk drivers. Overall, we saw an increase across the 3 casinos. It just wasn't consistent for all time periods. And much like with crashes, which we'll look at in just a minute, I think that the changes might be heavily influenced by the geography. So for instance, at Plain Ridge Park, once you leave the casino, unless you're going south, you're basically on the highway and out of the area, even out of the off the roads, the state police patrol in the official Plain Ridge Park region within 5 minutes or so. I mean, you're just almost immediately out of there. So there's limited opportunity for a stop and arrest to take place in Plain Ridge Park. MGM is about halfway in between, and Encore has a lot. You have to spend more time on local roads before you get out of the region if you're leaving Encore, and thus it makes sense that the numbers would favor the casinos where the drivers have to spend more time on local roads, both for this data set and for crashes, which we'll look at in a second. Now, the next data set that I looked at was last drink reports. And these are collected by courts, again, during guilty adjudications. My understanding and the understanding of the ABCC representative that gave me the data is that it does only represent guilty adjudications. There was a question, I'm sorry, I don't remember from who, from one of the commissioners, about whether they also represented reports from continuing quaffs, continuing without a finding. And the ABCC representative said he didn't think so, but in order to find out for sure, I would have essentially have to contact each court, and I don't even know who to talk to at each location. So I just didn't have time before this particular report, but it is maybe something worth looking at in the future. If some courts are collecting the data at quaffs and others are only collecting it for guilty adjudications, that would bias the results towards the locations that are collecting more data, of course. But the results are probably biased anyway, based again on where police are choosing to do the enforcement. There's also going to be a bias towards large locations. And we'll see the numbers here. So in all 3 time periods that I looked at, TD Garden had the most reports of people having had their last drink at those locations before they were stopped and arrested. But TD Garden is a very large facility, and so none of this data is normalized by the number of patrons. It would be tough to get that data to do that type of division anyway. So any place that's large like TD Garden, Gillette Stadium, and of course the casinos are going to be represented fairly high on this list, even if they're doing their best to curb people leaving intoxicated. But anyway, you can see from this data that during the Plain Ridge Park years, it was number 4, 2015 to 2020 on the list. In the years that MGM was open, it was second on the list of drunk driving reports and in last drink reports rather. And in the years that in the 1 year that Encore Boston Harbor was open, it was tied with MGM for second place on the list. So what this data tells us, again, it's not a random sample or anything, right? It's going to be biased towards where police are doing enforcement. It's going to be biased towards large locations. And so the rankings aren't as important here as just the knowledge that people, based on their own reports, are leaving the casinos intoxicated. At least, so let's say for the 5-year period that we have there for Plain Ridge Park, we've got 19 reports of people having been arrested leaving the casino intoxicated. Now you have to keep in mind that 19 reports are only those found guilty or who have pled guilty. So that's going to be a fairly small percentage of the total number of people who are arrested. Many of the people who are arrested aren't prosecuted for various reasons, and then many of them are not found guilty. And that is only going to be a small percentage of the people who are actually driving, unless we're preternaturally good at catching people specifically driving away from the casinos. And an arrest total of, let's say that this represented all arrests, an arrest total of 19 is going to be something like 19 times 500 people who are actually driving away from the casino intoxicated in over a 5-year period. So what this data does is corroborate the fact that people are successfully leaving the casinos while intoxicated. And again, I'm not trying to blame the casinos for that. I think they probably do the best they can. Frankly, the blood alcohol level at which one is too intoxicated legally to drive is fairly lower than the level at which one is visibly intoxicated for a lot of people. And so it would be very difficult using fully subjective measures to stop everybody who has been drinking too much to drive from leaving the casino. You'd have to implement, you'd have to put a breathalyzer at the exit, basically, if you wanted to stop everybody. So it's just I think it's a reality that we have to live with. I feel the numbers are predictable given the total attendance that the casinos receive. There might be more things that we can do, and I'll talk about that at the end. The third data set is the OUI involved crashes. And they kind of mirror the arrests in that they're a little bit unpredictable in Plain Ridge Park. The other two locations, at least they've all been increased, so it doesn't have the same unpredictability of Plain Ridge Park. But again, I think it has to do with the geography. Plain Ridge Park is just not a location where you leave the casino and then you linger a long time on local roads before you get into a crash, say. And this data only represents the data from the contributing communities in the immediate surrounding area. So the way to make this more meaningful would be to collect similar data sets in a wider area around or for the entire Commonwealth. It's just that it's a difficult data set to collect. It would be awfully difficult to do that for more agencies than we're already doing it for. So basically, to come up with these figures, I had to do something somewhat unusual. Massachusetts did not record alcohol as a factor, a contributing factor in crashes on the state crash form until I could be a year off on this, but I think it was 2014. So because of that, I wasn't able to establish much of a baseline for what you'd expect. But even though we started recording it in 2014, recording has been sporadic of that particular variable. Even the people who manage the state data set told me don't rely on that. And when I look at the local agencies and their data sets for crashes alone, and I look at that particular variable, it hardly ever gets flagged. So the agencies aren't doing a great job with data collection in that particular area. So what I had to do instead was look at calls for service that started as crashes, that were reported as crashes, and then resulted in a drunk driving charge. And that's how I determined whether it was a drunk driving related crash. That's going to miss some reports. It's going to miss any report where the driver was just too injured or was killed and therefore wasn't going to be charged. And it will miss others just for various data collection reasons. So the numbers are probably overall lower than the actual totals, but I still think it provides a relatively good estimate of the changes. And we saw some modest increases in the MGM and Encore areas, in particular, in drunk driving involved crashes. And I looked at it geographically, and unfortunately, again, I can't tie any particular crash to the casino. So I don't know that there's no data set that tells me that this crash here involves somebody who was driving away from MGM. All I can tell is that these crashes, again, they were called to the police department as crashes, and then the officers who responded later charged somebody for drunk driving. But the spatial pattern makes sense as far as the location of the casino. it makes sense for a lot of other things too. Anybody driving away from anything in downtown Springfield is probably going to hit these same highways and show similar clusters. Here we are with Encore, and here it's the spatial relationship to the casino is a little bit more stark. You've got quite a few additional crashes here along Broadway, and then if you're I didn't have this data from Boston, unfortunately, so I wasn't able to include them in this map or in this analysis. But if you're leaving the casino to going north and then you hit 16 here, again, it takes you along state patrolled roads that shows a couple of clusters, and then if you continue this way through Everett, we see some additional OUI involved crashes. So spatially, the data makes sense given the location of the casino, in particular for Everett. And Everett does track in its system whether an incident is casino related. And I want to say it's in the report of the 6 or so that we've got directly along Broadway here. I believe 4 of them were specifically flagged as being casino related, as in the person had come from the casino before getting involved in the crash. So again, more evidence that that this is happening. And again, you got to keep in mind, you only get into a crash in about 1 of 500 cases in which you are driving intoxicated. So you got to multiply these numbers by like 500 to get the true amount of drunk driving that's actually happening in the area, whether casino related or not. It ends up being somewhat scary when you think about it. So my conclusions overall are that the available data suggests that we have seen increases in drunk driving trips, as well as crashes, and to a lesser degree, arrests that are consistent with overall casino attendance. But if we really want to understand this, the further research that we have to do is to get better numbers on total casino visitors. I was a little bit surprised actually how hard it was to get hard official figures on that. I would have thought that was something that we would have had at our fairly easy disposal, but one casino wasn't able to give us any numbers at all, apparently. We also need to better understand the percentage of the casino visitors who drink and what other transportation options are available to them and what transportation options they take. I would like, in an ideal world, to get last drink locations collected at arrest rather than adjudication. That's unfortunately not stored in a easy to access field. In the typical records management system, you have to have access to the narrative. And so that's a big project to do, even to the extent that agencies are collecting that. And then it would be nice to be able to take those OUI involved crashes and get better figures statewide, because like I said, for some of these casino areas, it doesn't take long to get outside of the immediate surrounding community as we've defined it. And so we really need to be able to see what's happening across the overall state. Now, what these findings do support is, again, if you go back to the formula and the different variables involved, we just need to tweak those variables if we want to reduce the amount of drunk driving. So one of the ways to do it is to increase the perceived risk of drunk driving, and that would involve targeted enforcement on key travel routes based on local analysis of the best days and times, and I would make that very public. The idea would be not to make a lot more arrests, but to use that enforcement to deter drunk driving from happening in the first place. Any other types of campaigns that we can do to raise awareness and social conscience might have an impact. I feel like in some ways we're pretty saturated with that. Sorry, getting an emergency alert on my. But there might still be stuff that we can do in that area. And then again, the casinos reported to Marie Claire that the different steps they were taking to reduce the amount of intoxication and the amount of drunk driving from the casino. And it seemed reasonable to me. I mean, they're all, the Gaming Commission outlined in its responsible gaming guidelines a number of things that casinos needed to do. And I don't see any particular evidence that they're not doing those things. I would again point to the fact that it's very difficult to achieve 100% detection when somebody's too intoxicated to drive, unless you're willing to, implement breathalyzers at the point of exit. So I think you should continue monitoring them to make sure that they're complying, but I don't see any evidence, or haven't heard any evidence, that they're not complying so far. And that about wraps it up. What are your questions for me?
Are we just jumping in? How do you want to do this, Madam Chair?
I'm just unmuting.
Okay.
If Professor Bruce, if you could take your presentation down, please.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great. Very well done. I'd like to offer the commissioners an opportunity to question, but I want to commend you for the clarity. Very, very helpful. Commissioner O'Brien, you worked with Professor Bruce here. Do you want to give any kind of a preface before we get into the questions?
No, just to follow up on one point, Christopher, I was the one who was torturing you with the follow-up question about the quaff versus the guilty. Having spent time in district courts, I had memories of pleas being tendered in the courts and then last drink question being asked. And in addition to just making sure, what percentage of overall arrests or summonses we were getting in terms of the disposition number. I don't think I'm incorrect in saying the vast majority, particularly first offense OUIs in the Commonwealth, get resolved not by a guilty disposition. So you're not going to get that last drink information. It's going to be called a quaff, a continued without a finding, in the probationary period. I think one area, and I've talked about this with Marie, Claire, and Mark as well, in terms of this has not been discussed in depth by the subcommittee, the Public Safety Safe Committee, the subcommittee, which one of the agenda items will be this report. And one of the areas for discussion, of course, would be what, if anything, would come out in terms of recommendations or action items for people that attend on that subcommittee. Because the question of how we gather that information, I mean, Chris's first point as you go through this report is, he can only do so much with an analysis, if he keeps having to make suppositions on some of the raw data. And there's a lot of areas for improvement, some of which we as the commission have control over, but there's a large amount of this that is beyond our purview. But we also have stakeholders who communicate and participate with us that we can talk to about it. That particular area to me is one that I think maybe could be worked on. If they are not getting the last drink information at a plea that is initially a quaff, but ultimately becomes a guilty, the question is how, if at all, are they getting that last drink information? Because very often the quaff turning into a guilty does not involve an ADA. It would be a matter between the court, the probation officer, defendant, and his or her counsel. And so that might be some area of investigation in terms of what is the practice that's currently being followed? Can it be improved upon so that some of the data going forward can be more accurate and more in depth in terms of the real impact of OUI incidents and then their connection back to the casino for our purposes. I just wanted to give a little more explanation to that, to Christopher's comment in terms of where that came from. But I would open up to others.
I fully agree that researching a little bit more about how the data is collected and under what circumstances would help. But one of the figures I didn't provide in the presentation, but it's in the report, is that depending on the year, only about 15 to 17% of those arrested for OUI do end up resulting in a guilty finding. So again, from whatever numbers we actually have from the last drink reports, you've got to essentially multiply that, by an additional 83 to 85% to determine the actual number. And then again, that's only a small percentage of those who are actually driving. And I'm sure that they are biased. The ones where we don't have data are biased towards those first-time offenders.
Right.
Commissioner Cameron.
Thank you. Most of my questions, and I had so many, were answered in this presentation, so I appreciate the very thorough explanation of the data you provided, Christopher. But I do have some, when you talked about, the data of how well our licensees are trying to mitigate, I kind of just wanted to add that, this was so prominent in the legislation, as well as how to mitigate harms, all the harms, right, of casino gaming. And our licensees did pick up on that and understood that that would be really important for us. So, when they were competing for licenses, they did spend a lot of time telling us how hard they'd work at this, in particular, how hard they'd work at mitigating over-serving people at the casino. So that was something that I know they were, very well aware that that would be so important to us. And the other thing that I think is worth noting here is our GEU and the work they do to get folks in a ride share. That's not something I'm aware of that's done in other jurisdictions. I mean, they really look at that as part of their responsibility, is to really identify those who are intoxicated. And it really does make a difference, right? If someone maybe on the security team identifies a drunk driver and, suggests maybe they don't drive, compared to a law enforcement officer with police powers telling you, hey, you're too drunk to drive. So they've done really good work in that area. And I've always appreciated that they kind of, we didn't instruct them to do that. That's something they realized was important to the commission, and they've worked on that over the years really, really well. So there are good efforts to mitigate. But I love your ideas about, a campaign of some kind to really kind of reiterate all of this information. And maybe a good time to do it is because of this report. And part of that may be talking, there's a lot of new police chiefs, right, compared to when we started this project, Christopher, and maybe trying to find out again, and I know this would be for the next researcher, when, if they're able to do what Everett's doing and identify that last drink, where that is. I mean, Everett's done a really good job with that, right? And we've had robust conversations in the meetings with the chief, and Chief Maisie's been very well prepared for those meetings and knowing where the data came from and which ones he thought were casino related. So maybe that's something that could be worked on as well, right?
And I would point out that they're not just doing it for the drunk driving. They flag anything that they can identify as specifically related to the casino.
Yeah, agreed. They do a really good job. I just wanted a little, and this is a question, not a comment, is your information on the bias. You mentioned that, of course, there's bias from large locations and the law enforcement responsibilities, right? Location of the officers, all of those things. But how much do you think that affects your research, that bias?
Well, I don't think it affects the key point that I wanted to make, which is that if you just ignore the rankings and just look at the raw figures from each casino in terms of the last drink locations, and then sort of reverse, go through the multiplication. All right, if this is the number of people who reported a last drink there, do the multiplication to determine how many people were probably then actually arrested driving away from the casino while intoxicated, and then multiply that by the percentage of people who probably weren't arrested. You can go back to that original figure that I offered of tens of thousands, really, of drunk driving trips per year. I don't think that is hurt. Where I think the bias comes into play is if you're trying to do some ranking, and I frankly did it. I put a table right in my report that shows the top 10 locations. But I think that's a little unfair because, yeah, obviously the bigger locations have more opportunities for people to leave intoxicated. There's probably also a little bit. I see this in the media. I don't know if it's a real factor, but a lot of the locations that get some extra enforcement by the ABCC because they show up high on the list complain that, how do we know they're telling the truth? Essentially, how do we know that the people when they give their last drink are telling the truth? And it's possible that if you weren't telling the truth, that your mind immediately goes to to one of the largest facilities that you can think of, right? Oh yeah, I was drinking at TD Garden, I was drinking at MGM, and not report on the local neighborhood bar that you don't want to get in trouble or something like that. I don't think we have any hard data to know how much of those reports are lies, and frankly, I suspect it's not really high, but that's just my gut feeling based on my working with this data for so many years and knowing how court procedures go and so forth. But I can't say for sure. So there might be a bias there in that the larger locations tend to be the ones that people just think of when they're casting about for a lie. So I would be careful if I say worked for the ABCC and I was trying to decide who needed some extra attention, simply going down the list in order from the ones that had the most reports, to the ones that had the least, because I think you have to consider those additional factors. But to just show that drunk driving is happening with people leaving these facilities, the data does its job, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that information. And thank you. The report's excellent. And I know I learned a lot just reading it and understanding what the challenges are and what the opportunities are, right?
Right.
Thank you.
We can circle back to Commissioner O'Brien, Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner Hill, questions.
Not so much questions. It's been very educational, Chris, and it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
And thank you for all you've done for the Gaming Commission. I think a couple of my concerns were addressed with Commissioner Cameron. It's the last drink reports, and are they as accurate as we think they are? You brought up an example of, you don't want to get your local bar in trouble. So you said where your last drink was at the casino. And I'm looking at some of the bigger operations around some of these casinos. For example, MGM has a convention center right across the street where they, probably have been drinking, and then they go across the street to MGM for a couple of card games. Encore has Fenway and, Boston Gardens, where a lot of our patrons of Encore, I'm sure, go to the games and then they head over to the casino afterwards. And of course, over at PPC, the Gillette Stadium, they just take a little drop in there. So that was a little concerning to me. Is that accurate information? And are we putting something on the casinos that is true or not true? But you've explained to us the information and how you got the information, and in some cases difficult. I think what I would like to see a little, maybe we can talk about this further as a commission, is what are the casinos doing? Like you said, they are doing something to try and help with making sure people aren't drinking and driving. And I don't think I heard enough, at least for me, to better understand what the casinos are doing to ensure that that doesn't happen. Because I can tell you that when the legislation was passed, this was brought up a lot. Crimes increasing, if we put casinos in Massachusetts, drunk driving and other things. It was a big topic of conversation when we passed the bill. And I think I'm happy to hear, if I'm hearing it correctly, that it isn't as bad as maybe some had envisioned, considering the size of the operations and the amount of people that are going in. I'm actually happy to see that 1 in 625 will get in a crash, or 1 in 500. I thought that number might actually be a little bit higher. So obviously the casinos are doing their job, and so are the patrons, I think, from what I'm hearing. So as a former voter on this bill, I'm happy to see that the numbers aren't as high as I thought they might be. but it certainly is taking a lot of work from a lot of people to make sure that those numbers remain low. So it was an excellent report, and I thank you for it. And I just think we need to discuss this a little further and moving forward to ensure that we continue to see these numbers, which I think are pretty good, actually.
I can clarify a couple of things. First of all, I want to emphasize, and this is in the report, that the estimates of the number of trips that result in crashes and the number that result in arrests comes from research from other states mostly. I don't know that we've had any specific research we haven't had any research specific to Massachusetts in those areas. They mostly come from self-report surveys. So where people are asked essentially about their driving habits, their drinking habits, and then those are compared with statewide figures on crashes and arrests. And so I don't think the numbers in Massachusetts are likely to be wildly different, but they could be, within a reasonable tolerance, 25 to 30% even of those estimates. So I just want to make sure it's clear that those numbers don't come from Massachusetts specific data, but it was the best, that we had available in the research. In terms of what they're doing, all of the casinos reported back that they were implementing the TIPS training and training their servers to recognize intoxication, to cut them off, to report to security when somebody was visibly intoxicated. My concern about that is always that 0.08 is it's a high level of intoxication when you're driving. It's a fairly low level of intoxication when you're out in the town trying to enjoy yourself. If we literally cut people off at 0.08, there would be riots in the street, right? So, I think we have to recognize that the level at which people are being flagged for being intoxicated is probably above the level where they ought to be driving. And it's within that gray area that we get the phenomenon of so many people potentially driving away. I don't know what there is to do about that, frankly. I don't think that it's really not consistent with the entertainment casino experience to tell people you can only have, one drink every hour or whatever it is that keeps you below that legal level of intoxication. But it's something that definitely deserves a lot of additional thought and discussion.
So thank you. Before I ask my questions and make comments, I want to recognize that we do have with us today, and forgive me, there are people on the phone, but we do have Chief Valadas from Ludlow's Police Department here. I want to recognize you and thank you for your service, particularly during these last couple of difficult years. And certainly thank you for attending today in this important discussion. I don't know if anybody wishes to say anything to the chief, but I wanted to acknowledge you're here and good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Hope you hear me.
Yes, we can.
I appreciate the invite from Marie Claire, and I appreciate Dr. Bruce's synopsis and his study. I don't want to speak for all municipal police chiefs. I was trying to think of something I would say to all of you that I say this to many police chiefs, whether or not they're from a rural, urban, or suburban area. As a law enforcement practitioner right now in any community, regardless of your density, one of the, to me, one of the greatest dangers that the public faces is that we have an increase in impaired driving. And, you can have, you're going to have felonious activity, you're going to have drug dealing, you're going to have, some communities are going to have homicides, you're going to have shootings, you're going to have those things. But the occurrences, just by the numbers of people that are impaired every single day, even just through medications that they have that they misuse or whatnot, is a problem for every police official as well as for their community. So it's a danger in every community. If you're a city or if you're a small town. So we recognize that. I try to have my officers be as how should I say, proactive as you can. Unfortunately, police chiefs are also facing the fact that we have decreased numbers of officers. We have mass flight in the past 2 years, and that's nationwide. And we're trying to deal with our own staffing issues. And then COVID just made it, just threw in another factor of the pandemic scenario that we theorized for 30 years actually happened. we routinely deal with people that are stricken with maladies, if you will, and infectious diseases. But we just never thought it would get to that point. In my own department, we had over 50 people that tested positive. Some were worse, some were less. But thankfully, no one passed. And so I just wanted to say that if you could, people, all of people, legislators, we need as much funding as we could possibly get. We, as a police chief, I send as many as my officers as I can to ARIDE training, which is an advanced detection training for impaired drivers. But we need as much funding as possible because the municipalities have difficulty in trying to keep their police departments not only staffed but funded. So I stress upon all of you that as much funding as you can offer to municipalities so that we can encourage officers to engage in active patrols. I could add on to my staff. So instead of having 5 patrol officers, I might be able to have 6 or 7. We normally participate in grant programs anyway for other enforcement, for other statutes and motor vehicle enforcement and traffic concerns, impaired driving, hands-free devices, whatnot. But I greatly appreciate anything that all of you could do to help as all of you know, it's incredibly important. So police officers do not work for free. Troopers don't work for free. So I'm just trying to be as candid as I possibly can. And I appreciate your time, and I thank you for recognizing someone who has made hundreds of OUI arrests and someone who is actually still working. And I have good men and women here, and there's a lot of honorable men and women out there, overwhelmingly doing the job every single day to try to make everyone, make Massachusetts and our Commonwealth a good place to live, and for all of your families and for all of us. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for all your efforts. Commissioner Hill, yes.
Can I ask the chief a question?
Absolutely.
Which now I think with what we're seeing with a lot of the pot shops starting to open up, and you talk about impaired driving, can you talk briefly, and again, this may be a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day, but as we're talking about being under the influence of alcohol, a lot of the patrons I see now going into a bar room, let's use a casino since that's what we're talking about today. They have come in, they've been smoking marijuana. It's legal here now. Can you tell me the coalition between, let's say, having marijuana in your system and then going and having a drink or two, when you're testing somebody who's had 1 or 2 drinks, but have also consumed marijuana, does that show up in the testing? And are we seeing people who are impaired more now with marijuana than we are alcohol moving forward? And again, it could be a discussion for another day, Madam Chair, but now that we're talking about being under the influence and we talked about what's your last stop, well, you may be going into an operation under the influence of marijuana and then having a couple of drinks.
I can thank you. I'm glad to like to address that, and I'll be as succinct as I can. So we are seeing an increase. There's a direct correlation with a different type of intoxicant, if you will, with THC. So you're looking at more widespread use, and I know that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that it's a 50-50 split now. That's changed in the 30 years that I've been a sworn officer since 1990. So there was a lot different. I rarely saw heroin. There was a lot of crack cocaine, but I rarely saw heroin back then. But now you have a prolific amount of opioids and opiates, and then on top of that, you throw in marijuana. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, there's no one that I've booked that there's no narcotic user that I've ever booked that just does narcotics exclusively and doesn't engage in THC or alcohol. I mean, they're all interrelated. Okay, so the difference is that you have with the legalization of marijuana, you have an increase in the illicit, in my opinion, the marketability of illicit marijuana just because of the profitability of it. There's where we used to engage in a raid and arrest a drug dealer or a midline broker that was strictly focusing on just cocaine or just heroin, and maybe marijuana was more in other with other dealers. Now they have a myriad. So when you go to these dealers, they certainly have marijuana because it's so profitable. So we are seeing an increase in that. It's very difficult to detect. Some motorists, it's like I said, we have 70 officers. The ARI training, we have 2 DREs in my municipality. They're invaluable. It's difficult to recognize expert testimony in court, but we do our best through the tools that we have for an officer to gauge as much as possible if someone is impaired. And if we get an admission by someone that did the following, they have maybe some paraphernalia or they also took or engaged or smoked or engaged in heroin, whatnot. We sort of add that, but there is a direct correlation, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, we have it's 50-50. And my trips to the MGM casino here in Springfield have been limited. My wife and I, whatnot. I mean, just the use is so prevalent. I mean, the garages in MGM. I mean, in the stairwells, you could certainly. It's very, very prevalent. You could smell the marijuana. So again, there's a certain amount of people that are going to engage in that, and it's legal, as you stated. So it's just another task for police officers and troopers to deal with, and we try to do the best we can and charge appropriately, and try to stop and interdict when we can, and then put it in the court's hands. But again, any tools that we would love to have a portable test that would help us out, but it's going to be many years before that passes any kind of a legal standard where we'll be able to use that. Right now, we use as much circumstantial evidence as possible to try to do what we have to do. So, and again, first offense OUIs are they're all quaffs. So that doesn't. You get a bite at the apple, and then usually it's the second and thirds that you actually see some type of. But say police departments, and I'll make this one last comment. I work with the people that every single day encounter people with every one of my officers engages in some type of harm reduction counseling with people that they talk to. Okay, and then a lot of times police officers are a good avenue for people who are overusing or are engaging in activities that are resulting in negative aspects in their lives, jobs, their family, whatever, violence, and we try to help. And in a lot of ways, we're a good conduit to get people help. So we certainly advocate that, and we're going to continue to do so. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And highlighting an important issue, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief. It seems as though Commissioner Cameron has a comment as well.
I do. I just wanted to thank the chief. It means a lot that you took the time to get on this call today. I know how busy your life is, and secondly, thank you for your department participating over the years. This project, this particular report, and all of the crime studies would not be couldn't do it without chiefs willing to participate. So just a big thank you. It really makes a difference that you took the time to get on, and how you've stayed involved over the years with this project. So big thanks, and thanks for your service.
Thank you very much.
And Chief, if you'll stay on, because you may want to comment, I have a few follow-up comments and questions. I just want to make sure that we highlight that you've pointed out, Christopher, that there are many, many variables, many of which you've used outside of the Commonwealth data and had to form assumptions because the data is just difficult to achieve. And you've had to do that with other reports. And as we started at the very beginning, we have full confidence in the analysis based on sometimes the frustration of lack of data, but your solid assumption making. So as I understand that some of the variables that you've highlighted is the number of visitors, and it sounds as though you weren't even able to necessarily get a complete set on even the number of visitors from all 3 casinos. Is that correct?
I was actually surprised by that. I thought that would have been data that anybody in the commission would have really just immediately had at their fingertips. But Marie Claire had to write to each of the casinos to ask for visitor counts, and I guess one of them said that they didn't have any data on that, and I don't even find that remotely credible that the casinos themselves aren't tracking the number of people that come through their doors. But
that's an area that would be an area for us to follow up on.
Yeah.
I suspect there might be some information that might be sensitive to them if it's drilled down in terms of particular facilities for competition purposes and may be protected under their NDA, but I think it's an area we should explore. And I agree. I could imagine that would have been a matter of surprise for you. So I just wanted to point out, but the truth is that these are huge venues. And on a given day, Encore, if Bruce Band is still around, I don't see him right now, but Karen and Loretta, on a given day, Encore, MGM Springfield, and even PPC have thousands of patrons going through there, thousands, approaching tens of thousands collectively. Loretta, is that fair?
Sure. And, certainly we've had experience with each of them tracking some of their capacity numbers in terms of COVID. So, a different application, but in the thousands would be accurate, at least.
And so that's important. Then you also mentioned that the number who drive, and I think Commissioner Cameron pointed out the very active rideshare program that has been encouraged in the Commonwealth. I think it'll be really interesting to find out how COVID impacted that, and renewed hope that it will become as rigorous as it was in the past. But that again is a variable for you. Then the variable who drink to the point of intoxication is a variable, and then I think what the chief said is really the intentionality around different departments, because one, they may not have the resources to put out as many surveillance cars that they want. Correct, Chief Alatis, that you may wish that you could do more surveillance, but you just don't necessarily have the resources. So that varies. I think you pointed that out, Christopher. Then you pointed out the efforts at the casinos, and I think we've got that as a to-do. We want to revisit that from Commissioner Hill. I'm just putting down, Karen, if you can keep track of the to-do list. We did hear back on the TIPS program, which is really helpful. They have advised us. I need to be refreshed on whether we have any regulation that limits the number of drinks per hour. We do have the regulation on the service during the 2 to 4 a.m. Hours. Chief, I'm sure you're aware of that at the casinos, that service can be allowed if they're actively gaming between 2 and 4. I'd love to know more about the compliance during that. We do get regular updates from the casinos on this, but I think we need to revisit it with some intentionality. And then the point that Commissioner Cameron pointed out as well, the the variable around public service awareness programs. And you said something, and you kind of let it kind of slide in there, Christopher, and I want to maybe challenge it, that it may be saturated. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to rethink how to refresh those public service awareness programs, because I think Commissioner Cameron's nodding her head too. That is a variable. And, you know, even what Commissioner Hill said with respect to, and what the chief mentioned, it's alcohol, it's other substances that we deal with regularly. So just another item for maybe our research folks to think about, or even who we partner with, the Department of Public Health, on awareness programs, particularly as we're coming, oh gosh, knock on wood, as we're coming out of COVID, and for instance, the significance of using rideshare programs and getting you off the road as a driver. So I thought that the variables were really important for me to reflect on, because Marie Claire did such a great job translating. And the headline, when you look at it, you know, I see tens of thousands. I think I can put that in proper context because of the size of our venues, of our licensees, and then all of these variables. But I do think we have some work that we can. You've given us a little bit of a to-do list, and I thank you for that. Oh, I think you went back on mute. I read your lips though. Sure.
No, I think I'm. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I was just silently saying thank you. I didn't have any particular comment on the raising awareness, the public information. I was thinking along the lines of maybe something location specific. Literally, you know, something might reach the person while he or she was standing in the elevator going to the garage or something like that. But I honestly don't know if there's something like that already at work at the locations. I had intended for an earlier plan before COVID and other scheduling issues to actually go to the locations and do a little field research. I was actually going to, order a few drinks and see what I don't know, just get a sense of how much I was able to order and that kind of stuff. But that all went out the window. Well, one of the things I was going to check out is there anything in the garages, in the elevators, and on the way to them that raises any awareness or provides any information about alternatives to driving. And I just didn't get a chance to do that. So I don't want to suggest something that might already be there, but if it's not there, that might be something worth looking at.
That's really helpful. Really helpful. So now I just want to go back to your opening statement, because I made many notes, but that one was incomplete. If you could just put it into full context. You said it sounded as a modest increase, and one that was sort of within reason of increase given the casinos now in full operation. Could you just elaborate on that statement just so that we have full context now?
Sure. When you look in the, let me get to the appropriate page of the report, probably the most relevant statistic is the number of crashes related to drunk driving in the regions. And I can't necessarily attribute all of any increase directly to the casinos, but
even if we were, even if we were to attribute, how's it look?
So we're talking about let's see, in the Plain Ridge Park area, which had some increases and had some decreases. It basically worked out to a null, to really no change at all. But again, that only considers the immediate surrounding communities, and that's where I would like to get more data. When you're talking about the MGM and Encore, for all the periods that I analyzed, I mean, the increase in the number of crashes was in the area of a few dozen per year. So roughly between 20 and 50, depending on the casino and the specific time period studied. So we saw a detectable, but relatively small increase in the number of actual crashes that could be attributed to drunk driving. I guess that's where I was going for with modest. And this again is one of those areas where if I work the numbers backwards, I still think it does translate into in the tens of thousands of additional trips per year that would produce that number of crashes. But in all cases, the numbers are consistent with, we've got 35,000 patrons a day at these facilities that serve alcohol, and a certain percentage of them are going to inevitably drive away. So I guess
So it's
by the word modest, I meant not really unexpected and not particularly alarming.
And that's a modest increase from no casino to the presence of
yes.
casino.
Yep.
Thank you. I think that's very, very helpful. And I think I just wanted to really emphasize what Commissioner Hill observed is that, this continues to be really relative good news, that the concerns that were anticipated, I'm not saying that they were not fair concerns to have, but they may be being mitigated by some good measures too, right? And it's taking a lot of different variables, including additional police work, including great compliance by the casinos, including opportunities like ride shares, including public service announcements, whether they're in the facilities or whether they're wide throughout the Commonwealth. So it's a lot of factors that may be contributing to what is a favorable report today. Commissioner O'Brien, what are you thinking?
So the lawyer in me and the former prosecutor in me listens to a lot of this, and it's quite a task because even the conversation about OUI drugs versus alcohol, there's different parts of the statute in terms of penalty, in terms of it's last drink at an establishment. You're not getting people's private homes. You talk about protecting the bar. People may give an answer to, protect friends and family as well. And I don't believe there's anything in the statute about, where did you purchase any narcotics if you've got something like cannabis. It's just not something that's been addressed. And I know there's been conversation too, just about how police can make the assumption that someone's under the influence based on cannabis versus alcohol. It's a complex conversation. I mean, you hear the topic and you think, oh, this should be interesting. We're going to have a baseline and then we're going to find out, whether there's been an uptick. And there are just a lot of layers to this. So to your point about our tasks and the list of things to do, there's a lot of different areas for us, a lot of which we don't have direct control over. And so it's really figuring out and giving suggestions and talking to people who do have control over not only the data, but the impact.
Can I add on the to-do, and you alluded to it, but Commissioner O'Brien, you do chair or the Public Safety Subcommittee. That brings in really a broad array of law enforcement officials and experts. So this is an opportunity to explore these broader issues. And I know that the GPAC would love to, hear what you can report back. And then I think it's the subcommittee is, we hope that they'll come for recommendations to the commission. So there's some opportunity and we want to fully support you on that, Eileen. So,
well, I think it's more than just that subcommittee. I mean, because you have representatives of certain groups. There's one rep from the MDAA. There was a rep from the Massachusetts Police, et cetera. But I think getting the information and sort of the questions that came out of the report to the broader groups, not just the rep that comes to the subcommittee, is going to be critical to getting any traction on figuring out if we can make improvements substantively and then also improvements on data collection.
Yeah, and I think that subcommittee will be really helpful in identifying that, and we can be instrumental. I think we've got follow-ups here. So, commissioners, do you have other questions now for either Marie Claire or Christopher Bruce? And of course, we have the benefit of a, 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 a,
No, just thanks again, Christopher, and good luck.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with everybody, and I hope that this isn't the last time I see everybody.
Well, I'll say that I'll miss your presentations. I appreciate always the transparency that you offer around the data quality, the quantity and the quality of it. So, and yet you always take what is available and with reasonable assumptions, give us some very, very good information. Your analysis has been excellent. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have the benefit of, I didn't realize it was 14 reports now. So that's a volume. That's
A lot of writing.
Thank you so much. Be well, and we wish you the very best in Maine, and hope that at some point another agency like ours will have the benefit that you've given us. Thank you, Marie Claire. Excellent work today, putting this into good perspective right up front, just as we had hoped you would be able to do for us here. And again, Chief, stay safe. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of your men and women who serve Ludlow and the areas around. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Be well, everyone.
Yeah, stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right. So Crystal, it's noon. So you were pretty much spot on in terms of timing. Commissioners, would you like to take a short break now? After that, we'll hear from Chief Delaney, and then we have a matter with two matters for Karen, and then a short matter from Eileen and me. Do you want to do a lunch break or a short break? What do you think? Commissioner O'Brien?
I need something longer than just a short break.
Okay.
So.
Then it's noon. Do you want a half an hour, 25 minutes?
Yeah, if we could have like 20, 25 minutes, that would be helpful. I
Commissioners?
want to be mindful of the end date, on the end time too, but.
Yeah. I have got to figure out a way to warm up my room. I'll tell you that. Maybe a tech break for me. Why don't we, it's noon, why don't we reconvene at 12:25? Does that work? Mm-hmm. Commissioner Cameron? 12:20? Commissioner O'Brien? 12.
Yeah, whatever Commissioner O'Brien needs is fine. We'll take that.
I mean, we can do at 12:20 is fine too, if we want to.
Okay, we'll do 12:20.
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
A few minutes delayed.
So, David, you'll put up a reminder to the Dave. You'll put up a reminder for the public. I'm going to make sure not to leave the meeting, but we'll just go on mute and video out.
Yep, I have a graphic here that just basically says the hearing will resume shortly. So I'll share my screen and just have that be the thread of it.
Excellent. We'll reconvene at 12:20. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for an excellent meeting so
And just let me know when to stop sharing my screen and we will be good to go.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Brad, is the office nice and warm? Good. I think I figured out my issue.
I have the heater all cranked up.
Yeah, yeah.
It was so chilly this morning, even my dog didn't want to go out.
I was gonna say the last few times I've been at the office, I was hibernating in Kathy's or Brad's office because it was cold.
I hope you're cranking it right up. That's for sure.
I need to just remember to leave your doors open while I'm in and we'd be fine, but I forget.
That's an important point, Karen, that during the winter, we need to keep the outside perimeter open for the folks who are in the middle.
Right, we've talked about that because there's no heat no heat outlets in the center of the building.
No, so I mean, my door is unlocked and the heat can be cranked up. I do that when I'm there, but I know that Long is on a family vacation now, long overdue.
Yeah.
But he's been in there. I bet it's been chilly, and Crystal was in, so I know it's probably chilly for them and Marie Claire. So.
You know it's cold when I'm cold.
Is that right?
Us fat people, we like cold weather.
Yeah.
Not like this.
I don't see what you see, Commissioner Hill.
You're very kind.
So Dave will take that screenshot down. I can't see everybody who's in. Oh, great. That's really helpful. Thanks, Dave.
No problem, and we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We'll just see, I think, just waiting for a few. Not sure what the weekend's going to produce.
This may be it, Kathy. I think maybe this may be all the people that are joining on the video. We may have people watching online through the live stream.
My apologies. I didn't see Commissioner O'Brien. I'm sorry. There you are. My apologies. I was waiting. I missed you. Thank you so much. Okay, we can get started then. This is reconvening public meeting number 368. And we had a very productive morning, very interesting discussion. Now let's convene with the Communities Affairs Division, Chief Delaney and Mary Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So today we have for you three Community Mitigation Fund reserve application requests. As you know, last year we said that folks had to get their applications into us by the end of 2021, which these did. So they will be getting their funds from their reserves. So the first one in front of you is Cambridge, and they are asking for their $100,000 to expand their Blue Bikes program in East Cambridge. And let me just share. I just wanted to share the screen, just showing you the sort of the locations of where where we are. Does everyone see that?
Always love a map, Joe. Thank you so much.
So here's East Cambridge right here inside the red line. And of course, Encore is right here on this peninsula. And you'll see sort of East Cambridge is kind of the closest place that we have to Encore. Now, Encore currently has 2 Blue Bikes locations themselves. There's one out on the Harbor Walk, out at the, sort of the point. And then there's another one on Broadway right at the entrance to the facility. And of course, one of the key things that we want to do is try to encourage people to use alternative modes of transportation. And I think a couple of kind of important points to make here is in East Cambridge, there is some significant development going on sort of along the McGrath and O'Brien Highway back in this area. If anyone's taken the train in from north of Boston, you'll see that there's at least half a dozen high-rise apartment/condo buildings going in and some other businesses. And of course, the Green Line is being extended out from the Leechmere Station out to Somerville. So there's lots of things going on there. And in addition to all of that, the city of Boston will be redoing Sullivan Square and Rutherford Ave in the next couple of years. And they'll be providing bike lanes and multi-use paths and other things, which of course will make it a nice, easy route right up to Alfred Street and then to the casino. So we really, I guess we really just like the notion of this project. It does all of the things that we look for in these types of things, give some alternative means of transportation. And therefore, we recommend the $100,000 be awarded to Cambridge for the Blue Bikes program. So I don't know if you want to take these one by one and vote them, or if you wanted to do them all at the same time.
I think it makes sense to do one by one. They're different, and it'll allow for questions and comments. Commissioners, do you have questions or comments on this particular application? It's for the full 100,000, right?
Correct.
I just had a comment. I'm familiar with that area. The old courthouse used to be basically in between the 2 places where they're proposing to put these. It used to be a very difficult place to get into. Once you got there, you had a reason to stay. So actually knowing how close that bridge is to getting over and getting you down toward Encore, it does make perfect sense to me if they're going to want to add options to this location. This is a good starting point. I wouldn't be surprised if they put more in.
Yeah, Cambridge already has a bunch in downtown and the other areas. The one thing I did also want to mention is that we did do a very similar project to this with Everett a couple of years ago, where we funded Blue Bikes for them to expand their Blue Bike program. So it's very consistent with that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner O'Brien. Great use of the funds. Cambridge is very big on the bike paths everywhere, right? They really have spent an awful lot of money and an effort to do this. So I think assisting with this is really a good use of this fund.
And I think it supports so much that the Gaming Commission has already funded. It's consistent with our philosophy that we've extended to other communities. So it's great. I'm glad that they came up with this proposal. Very, very good. Commissioner Hill, anything you'd like to add?
No issues.
Yeah. So we'll take a motion on this, the Cambridge Reserve.
Madam Chair, I move that the commission approve the City of Cambridge's request to use the $100,000 reserve grant funds for purposes of funding 2 Blue Bike docking stations and associated bicycles in East Cambridge. And further, that commission staff be authorized to execute all necessary grant instruments commemorating this award in accordance with 205 CMR 153.04.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, edits on that? All set. Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes, 4-0. Excellent. Moving on to the next
Great. So the next one is East Longmeadow, and they are requesting their $100,000 to develop an online resource portal for business permitting and licensing to help promote business in East Longmeadow and promote economic development. Try to take advantage of some of those opportunities that the casino represents, and also to address some of the negative impacts of the casino as well. Again, I will just quickly share my screen here just to show you. Again, East Longmeadow is directly south of Springfield. If you see where it says South End here, that's right about where the casino is. And so they're just, downtown is just a couple of miles from Springfield. And this Route 83 is kind of the main corridor through East Longmeadow. Traffic from Connecticut comes up through there, and then from the east, from Hamden and other points east, may go through East Longmeadow and going to the casino. So, businesses that are along that Route 83 and others would have some good opportunities to maybe try to intercept some of that traffic to come, and avail themselves of businesses in East Longmeadow. So one of the things that we were really, that we thought they did a really nice job on was, if you look at their application, they go into a lot of depth and they looked at a lot of our Sigma studies and other studies to really pull out those pieces that tie it to the casino and to impacts of the casino. So they really did a great job with that. I think others could look to this application and see how they quoted chapter and verse out of a number of different studies that show what some of the impacts are and what some of the opportunities are. So we were really happy with that. And the proposal, the idea here is they also work very closely with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission on identifying this, which is another thing that we asked all of our applicants to do, is to work with the local planning commission if available to do that. So they've been working with Pioneer Valley in developing this. And the notion here is by making it easier for businesses to go through the permitting process, it will hopefully encourage new business or expansion of businesses within East Longmeadow, and thereby allowing them to hopefully take advantage of some of those opportunities that the casino has, either as a supplier to the casino or just businesses attracting some of the patrons or employees of the casino to come to those businesses. So again, we've done a number of different projects like this over the years, and we certainly recommend the use of the $100,000 of the reserve for this application.
Questions for Joe?
I just had a question. The application says 70,000, and then
originally they were a little reticent to come in and ask for the full 100,000. They thought we might deny them for that, and we explained to them that there's that once these grants are awarded, they have a fairly lengthy time available to them to spend this money. So we suggested that they apply for the full 100,000. So that, if there's any cost overruns from their consultant, or perhaps even after the consultant completes their work, there may be some implementation things they may want to use that money for. We wanted to make sure that they took full advantage of the funds that were available to them. And it was just sort of a misunderstanding. So they did, I didn't include this in your packet, but they did send us an email requesting the additional funds.
Oh, so they technically ended the application to say 100?
Yeah, that happened. We had a phone call with them, and I had asked Mary. I said, "Hey, can you just get us something? A request there." We don't have an exact defined purpose for it, but they would obviously need to submit us a scope of work of anything in addition to what they're proposing.
Okay, I was just making sure it was all.
Yep.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? I know that we've seen some like this, but I think this is an excellent application as well. And I did note how thorough it was. And Joe, I wondered if they came up on their own with that, or is that some of the benefits of doing the workshops? in your outreach.
I'm hoping it was for the benefit of doing my workshops.
Yeah, and this would be a good example for next year's workshop to share.
Yeah, I think it is. And I imagine that their work with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission probably helped out in crafting some language, things like that. Groups like that apply for grants all the time, so they have a staff of folks to do that. So, maybe we can reach out to them a little later and chat with them a little bit about how they went about it and how they did that, because it's a very good example. Literally when you get in there and you see them pulling quotes out of these reports, it's nice to see that they're utilizing those resources.
Excellent. So you need a vote on that one. Commissioners?
I'd be happy to move that the commission approve the town of East Longmeadow's request to use $100,000 of the reserve balance to develop an online resource portal for business permitting and licensing to help promote business and economic development as described in the memo contained in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today. And further, the commission staff be authorized to execute all necessary grant instruments commemorating this award in accordance with 205 CMR 153.04.
Second.
Thank you, commissioners. Okay, any further questions on this? Again, very pleased that they submitted and such a thorough application. I know Mary is nodding her head. It took your work, Mary, and we recognize that. These outstanding reserves. So excellent job, Mary. Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes, 4-0. Moving on to the final.
Okay, the final one is the Longmeadow Reserve application. And again, I'll just quickly set the stage here on the location. So Longmeadow, right next to East Longmeadow and directly south of Springfield. And again, we see South End, that's about where the casino is. So their proposal is to do some design work on Route 5. As you can see, Route 5 parallels I-91 and does carry quite a bit of traffic heading towards the casino. There's an awful lot of folks who work at the casino live in Longmeadow, and also patrons and others who would, coming from the east, from the south, would use Route 5 as well. And essentially, on something like this, we've done multiple studies, designs of routes that carry, significant percentage of traffic going to the casino. Several we did over in West Springfield, Agawam, others very consistent with all of the things that we have done, and more recently up in Chicopee, the corridor study there. So we've done this multiple times for other communities in that area, and this certainly seems completely appropriate to do so for this as well.
Any questions for Joe on this application? It's nice that they're varied. It's a good representation of opportunities, right?
Yes. And just one thing, just as a mention here, Longmeadow did use a portion of their reserves or very early on I think it was to identify some earlier traffic study issues. So anyway, they are not requesting the full 100,000. It's the 96 and change.
Yeah, 96,279. So that was a small portion that they used for that earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Joe? Okay. Commissioner Hill, do you want to move?
Sure. I move that the commission approve the town of Longmeadow's request to use $96,279.66 of their reserve balance toward the final design and engineering of Route 5 corridor improvements as described in the memo contained in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today. and further that the commission staff be authorized to execute all necessary grant instruments commemorating this award in accordance with 205 CMR 153.04.
Second.
Thank you. Edits, questions, comments? Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes, 4-0. Excellent.
Great, thank you. And just as always, I want to thank Mary on these ones in particular. You know, she spent the last year plus calling, emailing, cajoling, and otherwise working to get these folks to try to utilize this money. And you know, I think it was a very successful effort.
Yeah. Excellent work, Mary. I think there are only two that didn't end up.
Right. Yeah, there's only two that Wilbraham and Ludlow, they just couldn't find a mitigation.
Yeah.
So, but they're still thinking about it. They know they can apply for other dollars if they find a use.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, good. Well, if they're watching today, maybe there's some inspiration. Thanks so much. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, that completes our report.
Excellent. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 7, Karen and Commissioner O'Brien.
So this is the another policy, and this is something that the commission had already discussed in this document, you know, a collective effort to memorialize the commission's discussion so that you could vote it into effect today. This clarifies the sort of hiring policy at the commission. The hiring is overseen by the statutory authority in Chapter 23 case sections 3 and 4. 4 gives the commission broad authority, having all powers are necessary to carry out and effectuate its purposes, including but not limited to the power to appoint officers and hire employees. And then section 3 talks about the role of the executive director, which talks about that hiring authority being subject to the approval of the commission. There's one exception, the CFAO, which is in the statute to be appointed by the executive director. So then in the communication at the last meeting, you know, the commission recognized its authority, but also sought to achieve efficiencies and grant the executive director proper authority to best advance the interests and operations of the commission. So in the discussion on the process, there were some options, and the commission thought was the best option was for major policymaking positions, which is defined in 268 section 1, that would be something where the executive director would bring those openings forward in front of the commission, and the commission could make the decision on what they wanted to do. So those policymaking positions at our agency include the 5 commissioners, which are obviously not relevant to this piece, the executive director, the head of the IEB, and then all the other divisions within the agency, including communications, legal, IT, finance, racing, research and responsible gaming, community affairs, diversity, gaming agents, financial investigations, licensing, and then the Office of the Chief Enforcement Counsel. So in your packet, that outline is set up in the policy on how we would do this. And we're just looking now to see if the commission is in agreement that this is how they'd like to go forward and potentially vote on the policy.
Commissioner O'Brien, do you want to add?
No, Karen summed it up. I know there was some wordsmithing we pulled it off, you know, the last time we were going to put on the last minute. We did some last minute wordsmithing. I think this accurately sets forth the statutory authority and summarizes what we all agreed to in substance the last time we talked about it.
Any questions, Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Cameron?
Nope.
No, I think it, you know, it's very similar to what we've been doing, but it is appropriate to codify that, right?
Okay, then I guess we should codify it with a vote. Do I have a motion?
Sure. I move the commission approve the hiring authority policy that included in the commissioner's packet and discussed here today.
Second.
Okay. No questions, comments? Commissioner Cameron,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
I vote yes, 4-0. Thank you. Nice to close that up. Appreciate your work, Todd, on that, and Karen's work and Commissioner O'Brien's. Thank you. All right. Now we have by statute an obligation to review our executive director. I'll have Commissioner O'Brien go through the steps that have been taken thus far. And Karen, you can, is this a time for you to pour yourself a glass of water? All right, thank you, Commissioner O'Brien.
So this is the second time we tried to get on the cadence annually, switching to a calendar year assessment for the executive director position. Last year, we did this in the end of February, so slightly less than a year in terms of the relevant time period. But as we are all aware, Karen completed her own self-evaluation that was provided to us through HR earlier in the month. We each then individually completed our assessment of Karen, both talking about whether or not we thought particular areas in her overall performance, met or exceeded the expectations for the position, and summarizing it. I know those were forwarded to her, I believe, by Monday night, and she has had an opportunity to review those. I spoke with her very briefly about the one that I did with her. I believe, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe she also understood that she had the opportunity and the right to reach out to any of us individually if there's something more in depth after receiving the written evaluations that she wanted to talk about one-on-one. We have not seen each other's evaluations, obviously, looking at making sure we're complying with open meeting law and everything. But this is our opportunity to sort of publicly share with each other and with Karen and everyone listening our assessment of her performance over the last calendar year. And in particular, also at the end, looking at how she achieved the goals that she and the commission set for her last year, and then looking forward to setting goals for performance next year. So I don't know if you want to go roundtable in terms of summarizing, or how you want to go through this, Chair, in terms of order, but.
Well, I think probably we'll take the approach that I'll start without any details, but my overall assessment is that Karen has been exceptional in her job. Without going into all the details, Karen and I haven't sat down. We meet regularly, and we'll discuss. There's a couple of things that probably may be helpful for us to discuss in person, but generally, I think the team will not be surprised by a very positive evaluation. Karen has demonstrated to be a very empathetic and active listener, and that empathy has been so meaningful during this period, difficult period. It's stretched beyond the year that you've been in this formally, Karen. You've had to balance those who are both nervous about coming to work and those who are lonely. And that's a balance that is difficult to strike, and private entities across the country and public entities across the country are struggling with it. And you've done that very, very well. It's been very important to me to see the growth in the organization with respect to individuals supporting one another, being the team of mutual respect and excellence. And I really credit you and your voice for that. So in terms of the communication piece that we look at, I think that it's communication, but it's much more, and that really resonates throughout your entire evaluation. We always talk about being nimble, and I think the entire commission does that very well and has demonstrated that throughout these last 2 years. But it takes your leadership to really make sure that flexibility is used in a way that still advances important goals and important work. You've had to balance that. because you want to offer the flexibility that COVID requires and demands from a humanity point of view and from a professional point of view, but you've also understood their important responsibilities of the commission. You've done that beautifully. In terms of your management skills, I indicated that they're exceptional. I'll let others go on in terms of detail. But again, I would say that I love how you have worked hard to invest in the development of your senior staff, that you really have encouraged and improved cross-departmental interaction. And I think that's so important for culture and also for really advancing the mission. And then you always encourage the professional growth of the team. I love how you watch your team members succeed, particularly during these presentations. I like seeing you enjoy that. And I know that they feel your support. You note that you approach things collaboratively and not with authoritative style, and I appreciate that very much, with one caveat. There are times where it would be okay for you to clearly tell me, my fellow commissioners, the whole team, exactly how you're feeling. And you do, and when you do it, I love it. It's always with wisdom. And sometimes I watch you almost painfully having to, you're navigating 4, maybe 5 commissioners' points of view, as well as all your team. And that's why you have that job and I have a different job. I love how you really do that so collaboratively. And I just want to give you permission to always say, halt, this is how I feel too. And I know that you've seen it in your written document. I have, in terms of interacting with others, I find that to be where you excel. I mean, you excel across the board, but primarily that's just one of your most wonderful strengths. And I have seen you really make progress in that goal of that cultural goal that you wanted from the very beginning. I feel it and I sense it, and I see you integrating new employees into the team seamlessly, and all the other team members making them part of the team, notwithstanding the fact that we don't work together. I can only imagine how it will be when we do start to be more physically together, and I look forward to that. So in terms of your goals, I note that I felt you had accomplished your goals as you had described in your self-assessment, and I very much appreciated the 3 that you identified. And I note the regulatory review is one that will take a good deal of management, and I know that you have those skills to make that a priority. So finally, in terms of your professional growth and development, I support whatever you want, and I'm available for you as you may wish.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next? Commissioner Cameron.
I agree with the chair about the exceptional work that was done by Executive Director Wells this past year under, as you pointed out, such trying circumstances. I loved your analysis about not only just listening to people, but listening to how the team members are feeling about their job. I think in this past year, that was particularly important, and for you to recognize that. And there are many, many examples of how well you've done that. I think that was really extraordinary. Effectiveness, we managed so seamlessly from remote to hybrid to remote, and now we're managing it again to go back to remote. And I see, because I have the pleasure of, under your leadership of serving on the working group, and how you navigate various opinions and, kind of some mixed public health advice. And, but you just work toward gaining that consensus for what the appropriate next step should be. And I have appreciated your leadership with this particular challenging issue, right? Because there are lots of opinions, lots of fears, challenges, and you really do navigate it very, very well. I think we're fortunate to have you as a leader under these times, frankly, and these challenges have really given you an opportunity to shine with your leadership qualities. Yep, I also mentioned the positive, how well you work to foster a positive culture within the organization. That's apparent, and I talk. That's how I gain information, right? I talk to lots of people, and continually they talk about your leadership and how much it's helped them navigate their responsibilities. So that's you're to be commended for that as well. I think your team really does appreciate the leadership, and that's not always the case with leaders. I think your efforts to really embrace the diversity challenge and intentionally work with that. I know there was a team, and everyone's to be credited, but you know, that's not always something that a whole team buys into. And I see this whole team buying into, we think it's important to be more diverse as an organization, and exceeding the goal of 25% is something this commission has never been able to do. So I do commend you for that as well. You know, your goals, of course, for next year, you're never satisfied with your own level of growth, and you want to continue to, you know, provide training, high level management training, and the relationships. Karen, you do that really well as it is, but to mention that you'd like to improve that is just a tribute to you, that you never stop learning, and you're going to work tirelessly for this organization as long as you're here. There's no doubt in my mind. So I agree with the exceptional evaluation for this particular year, and it certainly has been a pleasure working with you over the years, Karen.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Brien?
Sure. Obviously, I agree with what's been said already. I'm not going to reuse the word exceptional. I'll shift. I think she's really done an outstanding job under some pretty trying circumstances in the last year. We've had, as you've mentioned, you know, one of the goals from last year was hopefully getting us back from a hybrid into the work, or at least from work, you know, hybrid somewhat consistency. And to do that, go back to remote again, working on getting back hybrid to the point where everyone feels heard. To your point, either wanting to get back in or really concerned about going back in. I think you've done a really good job dealing with the working group, dealing with listening to what everybody wants, and then what the reality is for the needs of the organization on the ground. I know you have a preference for the live. I think a lot of people maybe have preference for live when it comes to speaking and presenting. But I do think there was improvement too this year. I think everybody's sort of getting used to this format, but I do think the town halls that you continue to do and trying to find ways to engage people and keep the office going, I think you did a really good job with that. I know you're probably looking forward to being able to do it in person and dropping some of those massive Zooms, each meetings, but I did think you did a good job on those. The commitment to diversity, et cetera, I liked my experience in terms of that and who was brought in to think about particular positions, and then think about the audience for the posting and how are you going to get it out and let the people within this office.
Am I frozen or is Eileen frozen?
He's frozen.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. We'll wait to see if she catches up.
Sorry.
That's okay, Eileen. You
I think my husband
was right on the diversity piece on the
yeah.
The position.
Sorry about that. I think my co-office person is on a number of different meetings right now.
The good news is that you didn't freeze in real life. It was just a technical freezing. So.
Sometimes I think that wouldn't be so bad, you know, just stop for a moment. No, the fact I liked the manner, and I saw some firsthand how that was done behind the scenes in terms of reaching out to getting more diverse pools in the door. And I think one of the things that most typifies all the stuff I've been talking about is the active listening that Karen does before trying to come up with a solution. There's not a lot of knee-jerk reaction. There's a lot of, listening to what's going on, thinking about what the agency needs are that help her come to the best conclusion and solution she can. Going down to her goals specifically, I also, because I came from a procurement background and some of the compliance background, I did like to see, as part of that working group too, some of the progress that's been made on really solidifying our procurement practices, making sure we walk the walk, in addition to talk the talk in terms of we're asking our licensees to do this and function in a certain way. And we are now making sure that we're in line with that. She's done a really good job in that regard. The pay equity analysis, making sure when we didn't have on the ground, we reached out to get the resources to make sure that we're looking internally at equity in that regard as well. And then really selfishly from a function standpoint, I very much appreciate the improvement in the timeliness of the documentation that has been getting to us so we can get ready for meetings in a way that doesn't feel like a fire hose. Staff does the best they can, but I do feel like that's been a priority for you this last year. And I, for one, definitely want to say thank you in that regard. I think you did a tremendous amount to help for that. In terms of the goals, again, I think procurement's a long process. You're still working on that. I think there were substantial strides made. Hopefully, the last one of getting everybody back in the office will happen this year through no fault of your own. You had to go through that twice. And, as Kathy and Gail have said, the goals you set for the agency and for yourself are entirely appropriate. And obviously, whatever, we can do for you as commissioners, let us know. But I think you've done an outstanding job this past year in circumstances that continue to be more than any of us expected.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hill, you've gotten to know Karen over your tenure so far.
Well, she's been very impressive. I can say that with the utmost sincerity, and bringing on a newbie can't be that easy. And you have made it seamless for a new commissioner to come on board, to make sure that we get all the information and that I've gotten all the information that I've needed. And that's been very impressive. I too give you very, very high marks in your position as our executive director. I have talked to many of my former colleagues and certainly many of my friends in state government, and I actually hold you up as somebody that all of state government should want to be. This agency is one of the most professional agencies I've ever seen, and I do believe that in part it's because of the leadership that you have shown. I've been so impressed with your communication skills and your ability to build good relationships with the entire staff. You have been very precise in your directives, and you effectively communicate what I think you expect from your team members. And from what I can see from the team members, they look up to you. They don't feel uncomfortable coming before you. And your willingness to listen to every point of view, I think, is so important. I think it's not only appreciated by the entire Gaming Commission staff, but as one commission, and I hope I speak for all, we of course appreciate that as well. You always gather, I believe, the necessary facts and information before finding solutions to what can be and has been this year, from what I have seen and from what I've heard, very difficult problems. I think one of your best qualities as our executive director is that when you're faced with a problem, you listen first, take into account all the information, and then you try and come up with a solution and practical solutions, which you have done time and time again, just in my short time, but from what I can gather from the time before me, you've done a tremendous job in that fact. You continue to display a very highly consistent level of performance in your work. I mean, I can't think of a negative, and I tried. You try, you give these exceeds expectations, and you have exceptional, and you want to be able to say, but you need to work on this. And again, I've only been here a short time, and I haven't been able to find one of those things that I could criticize you on, which I think is great. And you're seeking opportunities, I think, to be more productive, and your positive attitude, which is what I love, encourages others to perform well as well. So I feel like you're a very detailed individual, and it reflects positively on all the work that you do. And finally, I think Karen shares her knowledge of the industry trends and best practices to achieve enhanced outcomes in your job. And I, as a commissioner, and I think all the employees feel the same way. So again, nothing but high marks. I'll think of something negative maybe in a week or two.
Okay.
But for today's purposes, I'm so proud to be able to work side by side.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Karen, before we go into the further discussion, do you want to comment? Eileen, I didn't mean to was that on your, were you planning on asking Karen to do that? I didn't mean to go out of line. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't want to put her on the spot. I figured she would speak up if she wanted to say something, but it's fine.
I mean, I think I want to convey my genuine gratitude to the commissioners for their support. This has been a tough year. It's been a tough 2 years. So I could not have done that without the support of the commissioners, and they've been tremendously helpful to me. So thank you to all of them. And then, as I think anyone in management knows, you are only as good as your team. And I think, as Brad has picked up right away, we have exceptional people that work at this agency. The management staff, the senior staff, I've never seen anything like it across the board. And they just continue to excel in all their areas, not only substantively, but also just proactively working with each other. We have not only intelligent people and sophisticated people, but they're nice people. And that I have been so grateful for that. And I am really grateful for the support of that team over this past year and the year before. So I really just wanted to say thank you to them for helping me, because you really did.
Excellent. So I don't know if Gail or Brad are going to have an opportunity to discuss the evaluation. I don't think there's any formal process. We have the opportunity to chat with you all the time, but certainly that's available to you always. Even if it's an adjustment of goal setting or whatever, all of us are open to that. But Eileen, we do need to discuss compensation too. By statute, we must do this in public at our open meeting. Brad, you're familiar with it from your days, particularly as a select person, right? So we had the opportunity to review a memo. Eileen, where do you want to start with this discussion?
So if you want, I had asked Tripty to pull last year. Karen was newly appointed, and with the uncertainty of COVID, we didn't change the salary. We when she shifted to permanent, there was a discussion of salary, and then we didn't do adjustments shortly thereafter when we did the review. I asked her to update what she had done for us then to sort of give us an internal historical picture about this position, and then go look at other EDs within the Commonwealth, looking at some of the other gaming jurisdictions as well. I believe everyone's had a chance. I think Tripty gave it to all of you, and you've had a chance to look at it. If you haven't, let me know. But just to briefly go over that again, Tripty comes up with a range, she calls them bands, in terms of numbers, salaries that a particular position falls within. The band that she calculated most recently for executive director at our agency would be anywhere from 129,600 up to 207,400. That would be the range. I believe the existing salary is 185. That was consistent with the departing ED prior to when Karen came. That was Ed when he left. Looking at other agencies, we took higher education out of the analysis. It's sort of a different creature. And the money pay that comes from them, that scale is sort of beyond the pale for most agencies in the Commonwealth. There was, I believe, an outlier at Division of Licensure. I didn't know what the information was behind that was pretty substantially also off the scale from other agencies. But I think a couple of the relevant comparisons would be, Enrique Zuniga leaving us and going and taking executive director over at the new Post Commission, which is getting up and running. His annual salary that was recently set was 190. And then the executive director over at Cannabis, created, somewhat contemporaneously with this commission, is, I believe, currently at 201,880. And I don't know whether they have been giving bumps of about 3%. And if they were to do that again in their review of their ED this year, that annual could go up to as close as almost 208. I think 207,936 would be the potential for the ED over at Cannabis. The ranges for the other jurisdictions are really there more for informative purposes. Every commission in other states is so different from what we have. So it was there to see if there was any uniformity. There really isn't. There's sort of a cluster down in one area. Nevada, not surprisingly, is, standing alone in another direction. But none of the numbers we're talking about here, I think, are beyond the pale when you look at other jurisdictions. So I don't know if people want to comment on that, or whether, we want to talk about numbers. I think, at a minimum, what Karen does, looking at her experience and then looking at Post and Cannabis in particular, I have a sense of sort of a tighter range of where I think she should be going for effective 2022. But, I don't know if we want to talk individually about ideas and ranges before I throw numbers out.
Oh, so sorry. I think also, I can't remember if it's in the memo if Troop D advised on it, but just a reminder that the staff did have an increase, but Karen did not. So if you could just clarify that, and then I'm sorry, Commissioner Cameron, thanks.
So there was, for the MGC last year, for 2021, the somewhat mirroring there was a retroactive and a one-time pay that executive employees received. The MGC did something similar. There was a pay increase of 4% for staff, retroactive to the start of the fiscal year. Her calculations were that as applied to Karen's salary, that would have put her up to 192.4 had she been given that bump. And then there was also just a one-time flat $350 bonus that was given out. So had she been given that, it would have been 192,750 for last year.
And she wasn't given it because
she was less than the time frame for consideration from going from acting to full-time executive director. So she'd already gotten the salary change and title change within that zone. So she was not given that.
I couldn't remember if Brad, if you were here when we did the 4.0% retroactive increase. So that was just an important important clarification. Quite honestly, I thought that Karen had gotten it. So I was, this helped remind me of where Karen was at that time. So.
If I could comment on this, I understand the technical rationale there with acting, but when you're acting, you're doing the job. In fact, you're doing it to the extent where you're kind of in a trial mode, and to do it the way Karen did it. And I know last year we were cognizant of our licensees not having their full capacity. So we were being very serious about our budget. But I'd be willing to, and I think it's appropriate, frankly, to consider both years, not just one year. Although we did hold her, but the reason for that was really related to our sensitivity to the casinos. So I'm very willing, and I think it's appropriate to get her up to the very top of that. More experience than other executive directors who are making more money, and taking into consideration didn't get the 4%. I'd be advocating to get her up to the very top of that limit. I think she deserves it. I can't imagine we'd have another executive director come in and do what Karen has done. So that's just my thought on the matter.
And if I could just clarify, Tripti just let me know, she reminded me too, part of it was because of the annual basis Karen is on, other employees aren't necessarily tied into the timing of performance review and salary discussion the way Karen's is statutorily. So it's not like talking about that was deemed off limits last year. It's just they didn't put it in there because it wasn't something that they would have done with regular staff. So I would agree with you, Gail, in terms of looking at both years as we're talking about coming out of today on this number.
Can you elaborate, Gail, are you saying at the top of the range that Trupti is established? Are you talking about the top of the range of the other comparables? Or are you talking about doubling, like presuming that she, quite honestly, we did pay Karen the same amount as the former executive director. And I think we all acknowledged that she probably came in with more relevant experience. And it was a COVID factor that Karen agreed to. And that was very generous on her part. Is that my memory is right on that, right? And it was our recognition, not Karen's, who said, we understand that she came with a different set of skills and experience. But we kept it at 185. Am I hearing you? I guess I'm seeing there's a few different ways to think about it. The 4% didn't apply then, but that would have brought her up to 192. I think I've been saying to Karen, well, you like make 192. Karen's laughing like, no, Chair, I don't. But she never.
I didn't want to correct you.
My point.
I know.
I love that I have an example right there, Karen. So thank you. So 192, if she had gotten the 4, and then another 4 on top of the 192, which I'm not now. I'm beyond my math skills. Or
750 would have been giving the 4% and the 350 that everyone was given.
No, that would be the 192, 750
for last year.
But if we had given her if she had come in at an amount that was more appropriate, let's just presume it was 4% higher, then we would give another 4% on that 192, 7 minus 350, 400, right?
Right.
Then that would be basically an 8% increase over time. Or, I mean, that's just one option I'm thinking of, Gail, as you were going through what's going on in your mind because of the 2 years thing. Or are we thinking in terms of the overall spectrum? I'm not really sure how to think about the cannabis executive director, how long that person's been in office or whatever, but I just wanted to know where we're thinking. I'm open to all options right now.
Well, I mean, if the top of our band is 207, with the appropriate, not that we have to compare cannabis and skill sets and anything, because that's probably not, it's a good way of just knowing where the rest of the state is, but it doesn't have to be, it's not apples to apples with us, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I just think, and I would think that probably next year we have to revisit bands, right? Because they were made at a time when salaries were less, that top band. But I didn't have other than to think in my mind that she should go to the very top of that band. I did not do the numbers like you just tried to do, Chair, and 4% plus this. I just believe she should be right at the top of that band because of the last 2 years and the extraordinary circumstances and the performance, frankly.
And the band was again
207 at top.
2074 is the top band number currently.
So if we were to do the 2 years at 4 and 4, I believe she'd be making just under 200,000, 199 and some change. If I'm not mistaken with my calculator, if I did it right.
Thanks, Brad.
So she would be making just under 200,000 if we had done 4% and 4%, which I think Gail is asking, right?
Well, no, I'm actually thinking it should be higher than that because I do appreciate the Chair's comments on the additional experience to start at 185 with that additional experience. I'm actually thinking I'd be willing to go higher than that, up closer to the top of that band, because of all of the circumstances we've each mentioned here today.
Well, and I think there's also the option of two conversations, which is one is, effective January of 22, what are we going to bump it up to? And then is there a retro discussion that we have that acknowledges that we were in an settled picture when she took over? And so we were going off of historic numbers, and then everything kind of froze, waiting to see how we came out of it and staff came out of it. So I do think there's an adjustment to be had going back. And then there's the conversation about, and then where's the base going to go from here? So
that's a more appropriate way to look at this, is to think about last year as last year and this year as a new year, and separating the two out and the retro.
So I have gotten a little bit of intel. So 200,460 includes the 350 bonus and the 4% above the 192.
what was that number again? I'm sorry.
200, and Brad is, and Crystal is helping here too. Thank you, Crystal. Brad, 200,460 includes the $350 bonus, which she didn't get. That was a COVID bonus. We gave more for those who are out in the public, feeling like our horse racing community and the gaming agents. Brad, in case I can't remember when you came on, we had an amount that was limited that we distributed. And so that would be the 350. So that would be
going into the third year. If we would add 4%, she'd be right up at that, right around, give or take, the 207.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, I wondered if it about a 12% overall.
Yep.
So what we could do is maybe make it retroactive.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was conceptualizing a retro figure going back to last January, and then another new going forward salary as of Jan 1, 22.
And
that takes into account the percentages we've all been talking about, those 4 percentages and the looking at some of the comps in terms of where some of the other agencies are that they weren't in our position of sort of freezing salaries the way we did.
We can go back to January 2021. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
So what, Eileen, Gail and I have sort of spoken. If you have ideas, Brad, what you're thinking?
Well, if I'm understanding everybody correctly, we go back to January of last year, 2021. So which would bring her up to almost 200,000. And then you add another 4% going forward, would bring her right around, and I don't have exact numbers, the 207,400. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the only comment I have is the 4% is pretty standard. And I actually look at the work as far above standard. And that's my only thought on making it a little bit higher, because we're in a position where we can value the work that was done, not just the percentage that seems to be the going rate around the state.
I think it's 8% though, if you do it twice.
It would be 8 if you went back like that. 8, yeah.
That's the difference, Gail, I think. Because I appreciate that. That's where
but it's 4% one year, 4% the next, right?
And then 4% again, I think.
So it gets I understand.
So we're talking about 3 times? I'm missing. Explain that one to me, Eileen.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the math right now. So if you were at 84 and did the 4%, it's a 7,400 bump to 92.4. Another 4% on that would have been, assuming she had been given that during the year, and then if we hadn't held off when she became full and not acting, and then you gave her the 4% everybody else got, then she would be closing out the year at, I know, Brad, you said 99. I got 98,696. And then to me, it's a conversation, not necessarily tied in percentages as much as to me, that would be the retro acknowledgement and adjustments. And then I'm thinking going forward, not just percentages based on it, but what do I think are appropriate corrections going forward, looking at some other agencies and looking at what she's done. And I come down at that upper end, 206, 207, I think is a more appropriate number going into 22 and then doing the retro that would have made up the difference of 98,696 for last year.
Yeah, so the 8% would be the retro.
Right.
Then rather than the highest amount going retro, Gail. Does that?
Yes, I think as usual, Commissioner O'Brien was able to really articulate what I was thinking, and just compensating this year for not just 4% because we were stuck on the 185, but really recognizing where the number should be moving forward. So I fully support the recommendation by Commissioner O'Brien.
Right, and to be clear, I think we all know the 185 was the wrong number. So I think the 4% was just kind of a number, but I think it really gets to 8% to sort of bring it up where it should have been, and then the retro back to just January 2021. But because it's 8, the 4% was a kind of a place to start the conversation, and then that would take care of the retro. And then now we just want to get the set amount going forward. And that would be back to January 21, 2022.
Of this month, right?
Calendar year, right? Calendar year of this year. Okay, so what's that number? I'm hearing different ones.
So the upper range on the bands we have is 2074. And I think it should be at least 205. And I'm fine going up to 2074. But that was the number as I was going through all of this myself that I came up with. I think it's in that range.
Yeah, I had the same analysis, not to the penny, but certainly the top of that band was appropriate for this year moving forward.
I'm fine with either. I guess I wonder what the 205 was versus what made you think 205?
Nothing. I'm just defaulting to, I don't like 202. I think it's too low. And then I'm looking at comparatively where it is, 205. But the band 2074 to me maxed is, to your point, I mean, she came in with a tremendous amount of experience, not only internally with IEB and then the acting period, but, Undersecretary at EDOP, she came in, not to diminish, Edward Dorjan's experience. He had tremendous experience as well, but I do think she had a lot of relevant experience that she brought into this position. So if we want to go to the cap of 2074 for this year, to your point, we talk about ranges needing to be revisited anyway. We had a hesitancy. I know I did earlier talking about salary ranges for anybody while we were in COVID because we didn't know what was happening. But I think everyone, Karen was no small part of that, worked with them. They seem to be coming out of it quite well. And so I don't think it's beyond the pale to set the head of the agency, the executive director, and for staff that way at all.
I agree. I can support that.
Let's do it. We have a motion.
All right. So Madam Chair, I would move, and we may need to clarify this if HR or Derek is on and telling me we can't do the math this way.
Yeah, Derek isn't here. Yeah, I was looking for Derek. He just doesn't happen to be on right now. I think we can do this, Eileen.
I do too, and I think we justified it very well.
We have the treasurer here. She's saying we can do it.
I think I'll take that responsibility. I think we did it appropriately. A lot of discussion around the reasons for this. It wasn't a thin air conversation.
So the retroactive only goes back to January 1st of 2021. But it rounds out to about 8%. Right. And then starting January 1, 2022, the number that you're proposing, Commissioner,
is 2074. So if I can make a motion on it, Your Honor, and we can, Your Honor, Chair, having a time warp. I would move that we adjust the executive director's salary starting January 1, 2022 to $207,400. And that we also implement a retroactive adjustment of 8% going back to January 1 of 2021. And I believe that adjustment figure then comes out to about $11,096. So just in case there's any math errors we need to clean up after the fact, I believe that's the
Inclusive
intent.
of the 350?
The delta, does that include? The
No, that is not inclusive of the 350.
but you want to add the 350 in for the retro, right?
Yep, so that would be 11,446 would be the retro, I believe.
I second that motion, and I appreciate Commissioner O'Brien's math.
And I went to law school for a reason, so don't hold me to the math numbers if we need to come back and adjust everything to make it work with what we've intended.
Well, I just want to comment that this salary discussion wasn't difficult for us to do in public, Karen. It's easy in terms of your qualifications and your experience. I will also note that it does not mean any successor in 30 years, right, would necessarily be compensated the same way. You have earned this as an individual based on your experience, based on what you do, based on what the expectations are for next year, which could include a significant expansion of responsibilities. So with all that, I note that this is a reflection of Karen Wells as our executive director, not as a position that is now salary defined. Is that fair, commissioners?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's an important observation, an important statement. So with that, Commissioner Hill, do you have any questions or edits?
Nope.
Okay, excellent. Do I have a second on that?
I seconded that.
Okay, I thought you did before I interjected. Thank you. Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
And I vote yes. 4-0. Congratulations, Karen, on an excellent year. And we look forward to your continued excellence going forward next year and this year in your leadership. So thank you for all that you do and all that you will do.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? I know we have one item for commission. I'm going to get out my glasses here. Lots of paper. Here it is. Karen, anything that you want to add before we turn to, I know that we've also consulted with you on this next matter. Anything else you want to add before we turn to commissioners?
No, just my gratitude. I think you're being extremely kind and generous, and I'm overwhelmed.
You can save this tape.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is my father texted me yesterday that, I see on the agenda you're doing a performance review. So I don't know if he's watching, but I'm like, oh, my dad would be like,
my dad.
If he's watching, he's very proud.
Yeah,
he should be very proud. He should be very proud. It's and also I'm sure he appreciates that this is a difficult process, but it's in public for a reason. It holds all of us accountable. And, I can say that all four of these commissioners are independent thinkers, right? We're all independent thinkers and hold our responsibilities very seriously. And so the fact that we, I think we're very aligned on that demonstrates that this is not something that is anything but fully earned. So, thank you. All right, we do have another matter, and I think Commissioner Cameron and Commissioner Hill, you received a copy of a job description. As everyone knows, the executive assistant to the commissioner's position is vacant because our long-beloved Jamie Ennis has gone on to a new position, but we've had the benefit of Jacqueline Nett's excellent help. But it's not her job forever. And so we need to fill that position. And thank you to Trupti and Natasha for giving us a good draft. Eileen and I had a chance to go over it. Karen too looked at it, and we haven't resolved the salary range, but apparently in order to post, we have to have that. Eileen, what do you want to add right now? And then we'll find out what the other commissioners are thinking.
I don't think I really have anything to add other than I know they've looked at the draft. You and I had gone through that in terms of really trying to think about what Jamie had done for us. I know there's been a little bit of, restructuring in terms of how we're getting support, but trying to make sure it captured everything. I don't think we missed anything, but I'm most interested to hear if either Gail or Brad feels like there's some support in there that's not in the description for the posting.
I was sent this, I read it and couldn't think of a thing. I thought it was very well done, really captured all of even the smallest responsibilities. None of them are small, right? But just really, it was a thoughtful job description that really captures everything.
I agree. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, so we do want to post it, but we've got to nail down that salary. I think if you all agree to allow Eileen and I work with Karen and Trupti on that, because ultimately, as you can see, the way we've said the salary for this position is set by the executive director in coordination with recommendations from the commissioners. I think if I'd like to hear from you in terms of how you view this position. It's executive assistant to the commissioners for a reason, because it is a confidential position. It's an elevated position because this person supports the 5 commissioners. So when we're thinking about salary, I want to make sure that our team takes that into consideration. Are there other things you want? Gail, you're nodding your head. What other things do you think of that should, we've all worked with so many wonderful executive assistants, and they come in with different levels and they have different responsibilities. I kind of feel this is a big one. Commissioner Cameron.
I agree. And I think with the advent of 2 new commissioners coming on board, this will be someone who really has to be able to support someone that doesn't have the routine down yet and is looking for that level of support. So I agree, it's a very important position with in particular with all the current responsibilities, but the ability to support 2 new people who are going to have to really learn their positions and will be relying on that support. So I agree with you.
Commissioner Hill, you had the benefit of both Crystal and Jamie's assistants coming in, as well as, of course, Karen's and team. But what?
I was just going to agree with Gail and say how important this position has been for me. And like you said, 2 new commissioners are coming on board. And without that assistant, things would have been a little rougher for me, to be honest. So I agree. This is a very, very important position.
It's also one that we really have to rely on integrity. I rely on this position to do my time accurately, and you have too, Gail. I know,
Yep.
and expenditures, down to the penny, keeping track of anything that we're reimbursed for, so that we are impeccable in terms of our accountability and ethics. Anything else you want to add? Because this is helpful guidance for Karen and Trupti as they think about that range. Karen, is there something you want to ask us or?
No, I mean, I think that, we did some research and there is a wide range depending on the person and the position. So it is helpful to get some feedback. I guess what might be helpful is, do you want a broad range in the posting, or should we try to narrow the range in the posting? Because you could put a posting with a broad range, or you may want to narrow it. Because the problem is, if you put a broad range, you could get, the superstar with tons and tons of relevant experience and many years of work experience that you want in the high end. But then you setting expectations if someone sees the posting that they think they're going to be on in that end, and then they would be coming into a job a little disappointed if they're not getting that salary. So it's tricky, you know.
Well, I
So-
think the suggestion that that the chair and Commissioner O'Brien work with the team, I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay.
They know what it takes. They understand the position very well. And I think that may be, other than us just throwing out an answer right now. You've all been in the weeds with this one, and I'd be very comfortable delegate. Well, it's not even a delegation. It's just I'd be grateful if the two of you would work with them and come up with that number that you think is appropriate.
Brad, you're
Agreed.
nodding your head.
Yep.
Yeah, if we get stuck or something, we're reconvening in February 10th, but I think our hope is to get this up, you know, in advance. So I think we'll come up with a range, but Karen's point is a good one. So thank you for that. I think that's probably an efficient way to go about it. And I have complete confidence that Karen Shupti will give us some great guidance. Eileen, are you okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll get that going. Again, kudos to HR. They've had a lot of, different positions to fill, and as mentioned before, with really the entire commission's intentionality and Karen's leadership, we really are doing well on the diversity end. And we're also just really fortunate at this time that we're getting some wonderful candidates. Things are, they're in flux right now across the country as to employment opportunities. And I just want, if anyone's listening about this position, this is a great team to join. So we're excited as new members come on, and very excited about the opportunities ahead for everyone. So, Karen, anything you want to add?
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Okay. 1:45. Crystal, you did a great job timing this out today. Thank you. Need a motion to adjourn. Todd's so ready.
So moved.
Second.
And there's Judy. Thank you. All right. To our legal team, thank you. We know you have an obligation to stick with us, and we appreciate it. Got a motion to adjourn on the table. I'll take the vote. Commissioner Cameron.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Aye.
Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
And I vote yes. Excellent meeting. Thank you, everyone, for all your efforts. And thank you, Karen.